Hey everybody, welcome to Wednesday and the Hang Up. I'm Dillahunty. I was trying to get the note out, but the default link that pops up for me on YouTube now goes to a playlist. So hopefully you'll be able to find an entire playlist of these shows. I'm also being told that The Line has a podcast that just started 2 days ago. And I want to congratulate everybody on the end of the war in Ukraine, because it's been a few days and Trump's now president, and he said he'd have it done in one. So I'm assuming it's done. For what's that? Really? Oh, I'm sorry. He did not actually do that. I'm being told that the war in Ukraine hasn't ended. What about the price of eggs and groceries? Because I mean, that was the big thing. That was no, that's not only not been done, but you're saying it's probably going to get worse. Well, let's take a look at what he has done, because he hasn't stopped school shootings, because there was yet another school shooting today. He did manage to have his administration ban pride flags and Black Lives Matter flags from being flown at any U.S. embassy. That feels kind of, important. What else did he do? He pardoned some people. He pardoned a Silk Road drug dealer and then tweeted about it happily, directly to this drug dealer's mother, and acknowledged that it's because his mom and the Libertarian Party helped him get elected, which means this pardon was 100% transactional. This pardon is essentially bought and paid for by his mom and libertarians supporting him, supporting Trump. And it's pathetic that he and other critics, other individuals, criticize Biden's pardons, but Trump's are clearly for sale. And yet somehow that's not an ethical problem. He also pardoned nearly everybody involved in the January 6th attempted insurrection of the United States government. This move has not only been denounced by some fellow Republicans, but denounced by the Fraternal Order of Police and others as setting a dangerous precedent that attacking law enforcement can be done without consequences. So he sold out the Blue Line crowd entirely, just like he's going to sell all the rest of you out, because that's what he does. Buy low, sell high. He's trying to buy the United States for low, which is why he got all his billionaire buddies to back him. The inauguration took place inside with Trump and his billionaire buddies, while all of his followers were out in the cold. And you can expect that to be the norm for at least the next 4 years. I say at least because there's no telling which parts of the Constitution he's going to try to throw out to continue this. A bishop at the ceremony, as part of the inauguration proceedings, pleaded with Trump in her sermon in a calm, polite, but definitely in a way that definitely irritated Trump and all the bigots, pleaded with them to be compassionate towards the LGBTQ community and to immigrants. Trump, of course, hated this and went after and attacked that bishop publicly in tweets, just like he does with everybody else. Come at me, bro. 1,500 troops, active duty troops, are being sent to the U.S.-Mexico border. I hear they may also have some coworkers headed to Greenland and Panama, but we're not really clear about that yet. It's just the threats that he bandies about what we might be doing. But maybe the plan is to if we get 1,500 troops at the U.S.-Mexico border, and then we take over Panama, we can just surround Mexico and take it back. I mean, take it over. I mean, take it. Homeland Security today, the Department of Homeland Security, ended an advisory committee that was investigating the Chinese-linked hacks of U.S. telecom companies. Trump designated Houthis as terrorists. Therefore, Trump is now backing Israel even more than Biden did. So every one of you out there that was like, Genocide Joe back in Israel, yeah, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? Trump's been more pro-Israel than any president in the past, and now he's siding with more of that. All DEI hires in the federal government have been or will be put on paid leave while we restructure to eliminate DEI policies and hires. The Department of Homeland Security has been ordered to report. Every member of the Homeland Security has been ordered to report on the threat of adverse consequences, any attempt to disguise DEI personnel. We really got to find these people who were hired on the basis of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And don't you dare try and hide them. Don't you pretend like this person's important. They're brown. Don't you pretend like this person wasn't a DEI hire. There's clearly a cis het white dude out here who's almost just as qualified, and he might have a family. Let's save them all. Trump's threatening to adjourn Congress in order to make recess appointments. I haven't seen that reported in too many places. That's an actually terrifying prospect. That despite the fact that they control all branches of government, and that if the Republican Party were united, all of his appointments would just fly right through. But there's just enough dissension in the ranks of the Republicans that it's made him threaten to adjourn Congress in order to make recess appointments. RFK Jr.'s confirmation starts in 4 days. Actually, I guess 5 days. I don't know. Maybe they are starting Sunday. I thought it, or maybe it's coming up this week. Also, the U.S. now officially recognizes only two sexes, and they are not changeable. He has pulled us out of the World Health Organization. He has pulled us out of the Paris Accord. If his father were as good at pulling out as Trump is, we might not be in this mess. He's renamed the Gulf of Mexico. Now, to be fair, that's only going to apply with regard to the United States government, because right now, currently, Trump has no authority over any other government or, what people put on maps in other countries. But Ron DeSantis is already calling it the Gulf of America. And I think instead of America, it should be America, because then you can just keep an M and E, change the X to an R, and the I and the C from Mexico can stay, and then you turn the O into an A. You went from Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. We need a Gulf of America. And he also ended birthright citizenship. There's many more. There's too many things to list. There were so many executive orders. And I'm sure I missed some very, very, very important ones. This is just a quick list to give me a little bit of an introduction today. We're going to be probably spending the next 4 years going over everything that happens to the extent that we're allowed. Many of these things will be challenged. There already, I think, 17 states that are suing the U.S. government over the birthright citizenship thing, and they will likely win because it's in the Constitution, and a presidential executive order cannot trump the Constitution. Yes, I'm going to be using Trump the Constitution quite regularly because that's what he wants to do, and that's what he's trying to do. And unfortunately, he can't. However, the Supreme Court's pretty much granted him the right to violate all the laws. Maybe when this gets challenged, the Supreme Court will also say, yes, as a matter of fact, the president's above the law. Trump is now king of kings. And you're only a citizen if you buy a DJT, crypto coin. That's going to be the new citizenship test. Right now, it's just the stupidity test. I watched a guy who invested like a little over $1 million of his and his grandpa's money and sat there live as the stock, as the ticker came in, as he lost $300,000, $500,000, $800,000. We have an epidemic of stupidity in the world, not just the United States. I spent today, part of it on Twitch, and part of yesterday on streaming on YouTube, taking questions and playing games and things like that. Sounds like Germany's about to have their far-right party gain a lot more power, if not take over entirely. Something similar is going to be happening in Canada. It's very easy in the modern world to be distracted by TikTok. which gets to hang around for another 75 days or something. It's very easy in the modern world to get distracted by Reels and YouTube and social media. And, oh, this is the biggest fight ever. This is, how dare you insult me? I'm going to ban you and go find everybody you've ever talked to and tell them what a terrible person you are so that they're now going to choose between the two of us. Meanwhile, people are losing their citizenship, their rights, their ability to acknowledge and live under their own gender. Some of these things won't matter, like the Gulf of Merca, because nobody's going to give a shit other than Trump and a bunch of lackeys. But some of his supporters are very surprised. Not just the ones who didn't have a fucking clue what a tariff was. Not just the ones who are impressed by a garbage truck. How sad is it? I watched Trump supporters who couldn't get into the inauguration because there were billionaires in there and the regular people needed to stay outside, saying, you know what, we're going to stay out here in the cold because I heard the garbage truck is here. The Trump garbage truck. No, I'm sorry. The Trump garbage truck was indoors in the inauguration. The Trump garbage truck is Trump and his clown car cabinet. Now, the supporters that were very surprised are a mix. They're not all terrible people. They're not all deplorables in the sense that they want to do harm, but they were all either misinformed, ill-informed, ignorant, and or stupid. We have built a new world run by the rich and stupid, by getting the poor and stupid to support them. I think I'm about to say that since we're moving towards a fascist oligarchy, that I'm just okay with a different type of government where you have to pass, some sort of bare minimum qualification test. Because as I watched the hearings, some of them, for some of Trump's appointees, you guys who watch these shows, we get callers who just won't answer a question. It's like they've been watching those hearings. Sir, do you think that showing up drunk should be a disqualifying act for the Secretary of Defense? And the response was, those are baseless rumors from anonymous individuals. I didn't ask. And Congress is terrible about holding these people to the fire. Everybody in Congress needs to tune in and watch how this is fucking done. Because when I ask a question, we're not moving on until you answer that question, not the question you thought it was, not some sermon or soundbite that somebody pointed to. Do you think that showing up to work drunk should be a disqualifying act for someone serving as Secretary of Defense? Yes or fucking no? If you want to expand beyond yes or no, we can do a follow-up question. But saying those are baseless anonymous rumors, you're not answering my question. Objection, Your Honor. Objection. These people are supposed to know the law. They're supposed to be like lawyers. They cannot get a witness to answer one stinking question. And then what are the Republicans doing? The wonderful homeland values Republicans, the law and order Republicans, the we need to make the government strong Republicans. Hey, man, I'm assuming you love your mother. What else do you love? Those are the kinds of hard-hitting questions. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, who's a completely fake gamer, the richest man on the planet, pretending that he knows how to play Path of Exile 2 by paying someone to level up a level 96, 97 hardcore character for him, because he really, really, really needs people to think he's cool when everybody knows he's not. This is a spoiled brat that has never been in touch with reality, who has bought his friends. And of his friends, only the one who continue to be yes men remain his friends, which is why Sam Harris and Elon Musk are no longer friends, and why Sam Harris has come out and said that Elon Musk has lost his mind. All right, I have called Sam Harris out for other things. I still genuinely like Sam on a great many things. I think it's a problem for him to go after trans people like that. I think it's a problem for him to have not come forward about Musk before the fucking election, in a way that made sense. But this is a guy, Elon Musk, who's so desperate to be liked that he pays people to play games for him so that it can look like he's playing games. You know what else he did? He paid people to do all the work that's ever been done for any company or corporation and to design anything and everything. He's never designed anything, never created anything. He's a leech. And he's now the richest person on the planet. And he has an office in the West Wing. For all the Trump supporters who feel baffled and confused, keep paying attention. We'll try and keep you updated. Joining me tonight to help a little bit, Jim Barrows. Please welcome him back.
Hey, Matt.
How are you surviving?
Well, I'm surviving the cold. We got 5 inches of snow down here in southern Alabama. I was just looking at some pictures of the beaches at near Pensacola, and they're white and not from the sand. So, and then watching the horror show that is our political process right now, that is our government as of now, is pretty horrifying. You're talking about the bishop who asked for mercy. It wasn't Trump, but it was a Republican senator who said that she should be put on a deportation list. And I'm like, well, finally, they're admitting there's lists, right? But she's an American citizen, and you're going to put her on a deportation list because she asked for mercy. I mean, do they even read the Bible? Do they even understand what mercy is? And at least that much, or do they just? I don't get it. She asked for mercy. It's all she did.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't know. This whole thing is just baffling to me. I still don't understand it. He hasn't. Yeah, I mean, the promises he's keeping are just outrageously stupid. Threatening Greenland, threatening Panama Canal, threatening Mexico, threatening Canada. They do know that there's, Canada is the world leader in war crimes, right?
Now, I didn't
It's
answer
really
this.
cold up there.
I didn't answer this or address this because I didn't want to poison the well at all. You and I haven't spoken about this. And I don't know if we have a different take on this. But there's been a lot of talk about Elon Musk's salute. Did you see about this?
Yeah, I did. He's either a complete idiot or he's a complete Nazi. And I will believe either of those things. I think he is a complete idiot. I don't think, he's not
Or
an
both.
engineer. Yeah, he could be both. Yes, you kind of have to be both to be a Nazi, I think. But he, like you said, he bought everything, right? He bought Tesla, he bought SpaceX. He didn't found any company he has been associated with. He's bought his way into all of them, and then in many cases thrown the founders out. So he's not a smart guy, and he's trying to be a smart guy. It would not surprise me if we could take a brain recording of him that he thought he was doing some sort of "My Heart to You" salute.
Yeah.
But it also wouldn't surprise me if he was actually doing a Hitler salute either. I mean, given his support for the far right in Germany, yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. I think the Germany's reaction to it says more than anything else, right? He just got his picture taken down from a museum over this, so I think they've got the right of it. I think that is exactly what it was.
I tend to think
you can make the other case, but you got to work for it.
Yeah, and I'm only going to work for it just a smidgen because I don't really care that much. There was a German newspaper that Arden told me about that had a headline that said a Nazi suits or a Hitler salute's a Hitler salute is a Hitler salute. And my personal take, given what I've heard from Musk before, is that while he is definitely stupid and possibly, even likely, some form of Nazi fascist that I don't think he intended in any way, both of the times that he did that with his hands. I don't think he was intending to convey that message. I think he's just a neurodivergent, spoiled brat that desperately wants to look cool in front of people, that has no experience public speaking, no sense of consequences, no sense of what you should or shouldn't do. He wants to be a free speech absolutist while shutting down everybody else's free speech when it's a little too annoying for him. And I think that was just clumsy, stupid. But here's the real problem with it. He hasn't apologized for it. If I had been so clumsy as to standing up there, do that in front of the world, and all of a sudden people are like, did he just give a Nazi salute? I would immediately get with my PR people and put out a statement, probably going live on TV, saying something along the lines of, I understand now why people are reacting this way. That thought never occurred to me. It's the furthest thing from my mind. And I greatly regret doing that. I sincerely apologize to the victims of the Holocaust, to German people, and to others for giving the wrong impression and even suggesting that this was a reasonable topic of discussion. I will make sure that I don't do anything like that in the future. Please, let's move on and make the world better. Anything like that. But he hasn't done that.
Any
and he won't
acknowledgement
do
of
that.
wrongdoing, yeah, he won't.
You know what he said?
He
said it was annoying.
No,
he said it was annoying to have people think he was a Nazi.
Annoying. You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be more than annoyed if people thought I was a Nazi. I would be absolutely flabbergasted and ashamed of anything I had done to make people think I was a Nazi.
What do you think? We haven't talked about this, and there's a bunch to go through, and we don't have. I mean, we're going to move to calls here very quickly, but we're not going to have time to go through all these. But whoever took over Department of Homeland Security is, based on the news that I've seen, acting quicker than some of the other branches and divisions within the government. And so they already declared the Houthis as terrorists, which, Biden removed them from that terrorist list. Trump put them back on. But that, whether or not they are or should be, is separate from the fact that this is a play to back Israel. Whereas Biden was working towards a ceasefire a little bit. And I get it. Biden shouldn't get amazing credit for helping with a ceasefire, especially after he armed them. On the other hand, he armed them in part because we have treaties and alliances that we're beholden to. And so there are certain things you can't do to try to broker a peace and everything else. And it's far more complicated than most people want to, acknowledge. And yet this is right out of the gate. Here's the most important thing. Let's ban pride flags and BLM flags at embassies. Let's make sure those DEI hires are on leave. And don't you dare try to pretend like, any of them are out there. There will be serious consequences if you try and hide a DEI hire. It's like they're going through looking for cockroaches. If you try to hide that cockroach, you're doomed.
Yeah, that whole thing of purging the government of DEI hires, it's just going to be cover for getting rid of anybody they don't like. They've already done that to one female Navy admiral in just the most disgusting way possible. Yeah, anybody, if you're female or your skin isn't white, I think they're going to call you DEI hire and fire you, even though you're the most qualified person, maybe the most qualified person in the country to fill that role. Trump's cabinet clearly shows he doesn't care about qualifications. He doesn't care about competency. He only cares about whether or not you're going to suck his dick. So,
yeah. The one that caught me by surprise. No, go ahead.
Yeah. I was saying, did you notice that even the ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, he's kicked over to China?
No, I didn't see that yet.
He wants the president of China to negotiate that. Yeah, he wants the president of China to negotiate it. He doesn't want to do it.
So this one just popped up on my feed. I talked about it in the opening. It popped up literally at about 4 p.m. And that is Trump is threatening to use his powers to adjourn Congress so he can make research appointments for at least some of his top cabinet nominees and their deputies in order to enable them to begin running the largest federal departments. Now, the purpose of having these cabinet appointees approved by Congress is so that something like this doesn't happen. Something like that. Do you know how much damage can be done by just putting everybody he wants in the position without any confirmation by Congress in a recess appointment, especially when the recess was brought on by the executive order of the president? We could be in a fully locked down fascist state in a month.
Mm-hmm. Less than that. And I was just checking to make sure he had the constitutional right to actually adjourn Congress. And according to constitution.congress.gov, which I'm going to assume, since it's Congress.gov, is probably an authority, the second clause of Article 2, Section 3 authorizes the president to convene or adjourn the houses of Congress in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
However, no president has used his power to adjourn the houses.
Yep.
So
this will be the
we'll
first
be in
time.
brand new territory. Yeah.
So the House is scheduled to leave for up to 10 days starting this Friday, so the parties can hold their annual policy retreats. The GOP-controlled House, I'm reading this, by the way, from CBS News. The GOP-controlled House could pass a resolution formally adjourning for that length of time and send the resolution to the Senate. The upper chamber, where at least 60 votes would be needed to consider a consent resolution, would either also adjourn or fail to agree to do so. And under the Constitution, both houses of Congress must agree to adjourn for more than 3 days. If the Senate doesn't agree, the president could try using his adjournment power to send the Senate home, launching the executive and legislative branches into uncharted constitutional territory. This has never been done, never been used. I suspect, because this just hit at about 4 o'clock today, I would like to think this pisses a lot of people off and gets a lot of people talking. Because recess appointments, back when people tried to maintain even the air of dignity and respect for the office, were few and far between. They were done in the case of emergency, where the Congress had already adjourned and some critical function of the government needed a role filled. And it's, I'm going to appoint this, and immediately, once Congress resumes, they will either confirm this recess appointee or they will reject this recess appointee and we'll go through the regular process to find a replacement. This is an end around. And it's weird to me that this is happening when they control everything. Like everything. And it shows that
I think it's
his administration is at odds with some internal group.
Well, it's a testament to just how bad the nominees are. That not even the Republicans really want to put these people in charge. Except, I mean, let's ignore the fact that he's a drunken misogynist, right? Let's just assume that he's not. Let's look at his other qualifications, which are he was a captain. Okay. I think it was his highest rank was captain. Did he actually lead troops? No, not apparently. He was a PR guy. He never led troops in combat. His policies and the things he said are horrifying, and he doesn't understand the business of running the military, all four branches, not just I mean, he was just an army guy. I mean, by the time you get to be a general in any of the branches, you're working with other generals, especially in the Pentagon. You're working with other brass. At least you understand sort of kind of how the other branches work. But this guy doesn't understand policy. He doesn't know what's going on. And then you add in his personal issues. And this is a guy that is going to get taken by every bright-eyed, bushy-tailed seller of defense equipment. He's an idiot.
Yeah.
And that's just Hegseth. I mean, uh,
It was
Kennedy.
shocking.
Oh my God.
It was shocking how many basic questions about the job Hegseth was unable to answer. Not just that all the ones he was unwilling to answer, but the ones he was just unable to answer. Like, and I'm not digging in on the questions, but it's like they know he's going to get confirmed already, so they're not even going to prepare him to give the illusion that he knows what's going on.
Or worse, they did prepare him.
If they did prepare him, it's yes, you're right. That is definitely that's an order of magnitude worse, that somebody could be prepared and then not be able to answer those questions and still be in a position to get not just any job, but Secretary of Defense confirmed by the government. I mean, we've got Marco Rubio at state. Believe it or not, I think that's one of the best appointments that Trump made. And I'm still opposed to it, but at least Marco Rubio has some semblance of understanding of the internal workings of this stuff, having done jobs related to that.
Right.
Hegseth is I don't know. I'm not going to go into all his stuff, but he's got a lot of issues. And I think his time at Fox News was just about up anyway, but you never know.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'm dumbfounded. We have a bunch of callers. Oh, go ahead.
I was saying, and there are no adults in the room. There is nobody who is going to tell Trump he's being stupid or that he can't do that. And that's the worst, I think. That there are no adults.
Yep. All right. We have a bunch of callers and quite a few theists, and theists are always going to get priority here. I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this one real quick. Timmy's calling from California. Timmy's a theist. Pronouns are he, him. And Are you there, Timmy?
Yeah, I'm here.
It says here that your question is, do we think that trans women should compete against real women in sports? Well, since trans women are real women, my answer is yes. I think what you're asking is whether trans women should compete with cis women in sports. And that is going to vary from sport to sport. And it's up to the governing bodies of those sports to figure out exactly what is fair. But as a general rule, you don't get to discriminate against an entire class based on single members of that class. And so you cannot discriminate against the entirety of folks who are trans based on individual problems or who's going to be better here or there. You can't just say, oh, no trans people. You'd have to say no people with this characteristic, no people with, hormone levels above this or whatever. And that's what most of those organizations have done. So that's my answer.
All right.
Cool. Thanks. Bye.
Easy peasy. Answer's yes.
All right. You ready to dig in a little harder here? Here we go. Calling in tonight from California is Dominic. Pronouns are he, him. Dominic's a theist who wants to ask us about what is a right. How are you, Dominic? You're on with Jim and Matt.
Hey, I'm good. How's it going with you guys?
Terrible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. I know. You're disappointed with the election results. But
yes, but go ahead.
We brought it on ourselves. Oh, I'm sorry about that thing. But we brought it on ourselves and the American people. Well, the people who did vote did, and they'll reap what they sow.
I'm with you. So you're asking what is a right, and I think my short answer is that a right is a permission that is protected by law.
Okay, I actually have
it's
several
a power
questions.
or privilege protected by law.
Okay, go ahead, Dominic.
But okay. Now, I did watch a video recently on Jim's channel where he said he thinks that these types of questions are disingenuous because the asker is looking for a gotcha moment. And whether or not that's true, I don't know how you feel, Matt. I still think that these are the most important questions that anyone could or should be asking.
Wait, you think what is a right You think the question, what is a right, is an important question? Because I think what's more important, because it's just a simple little definition. What's more important is what rights should we be protecting and what rights are we be protecting? Those are important questions, not what is a right.
Well, the
I
answer to
mean,
that
what
is
is a
all
right is
right.
pretty settled law. We've known this for, at least since what was the earliest code, legal code we're aware of, from well before the Bible. So
The Hammurabi Code, yeah. Anyway,
Hammurabi code,
sorry,
yeah.
Dominic, go ahead.
Well, the first question I was going to ask is, do sentient beings, so not just humans, do sentient beings have inherent rights?
I don't think anyone
Nobody
has
has inherent
inherent rights.
rights. Yeah, the
Yeah,
definition we just gave you, there's nothing inherent about it, right? It's a power or
right.
privilege that is protected by law. So there's nothing inherent there at all.
I did a debate with
Okay.
Abdu Murray quite a few years ago in Amarillo, Texas. And I made a point at the time, it was off the cuff, and I didn't realize at the time, how significant it was or how significant it might end up being. But there was a question related to the debate about rights. And I pointed out, what good is a right if nobody's protecting it? What good is it to say, I do have this right if nobody's protecting it? That's useless. What you're really saying is, I should have this right and someone should protect it. And that's why I talk about it in terms of permissions protected by law. But go ahead. What are you trying to get to?
Well, I think that's a good point, but I think that the person who should be protecting our rights are individuals themselves, and we shouldn't be relying on collective organizations to protect rights on our behalf, because they
Really?
almost always, actually, every time they will sacrifice rights.
How is it that an individual can, let's say you and me and Jim, we've all decided that we are going to individually protect our rights. And my right, I think I have the right to kill you.
That is not a right.
I just said,
Sure it is.
you just defined it as rights protected by the individual. All a right is a permission. Hang on. All a right is a permission that's protected. You think it should be protected by the individual and not by law or government. And if I'm the individual and I think I have a right to kill you, then I can protect that right under your model.
And even worse,
I
you aren't actually
did
arguing
not.
for rights, because remember, a right, as we've defined it, and as it's defined in general, is a power or privileges protected by law. And since you said society shouldn't be protecting rights, so you're basically saying there shouldn't be laws, because laws come from a society. They come from a group of human beings. So
Yep.
you're saying
Absolutely.
you don't want law. You're basically arguing for anarchy and power from the barrel of a gun. It's basically what you're arguing for.
No, anarchy has nothing to do
Yes.
with rule from a barrel of a gun. That's what laws are, actually. Anarchy means without rulers, and it's based on voluntary consent of individuals, where they go out and
That's
interact
what
in ways
societies are,
that
and that's
are
what
not
laws are.
under coercion. No, they're not.
That's what
Laws,
societies do.
no,
That's what
laws.
societies do when they come together to agree on things and to create what we call laws. As
Laws are
you're going around in
restrictions.
Hang on.
circles.
Dominic, this is really easy. Dominic, is the government made up of elected people?
Yeah.
So we live in a participatory government here in the United States where you could run for office and win, right?
No. None of us have any shot of winning.
Okay. I'm sorry, Dominic, but I don't feel like continuing the conversation with someone who's going to dishonestly say that none of us have a shot at winning when Marjorie Taylor Greene and shut your mouth, when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert are in Congress.
And let's not forget AOC on the other side, right? A former bartender is now also a member of Congress. So we can point to a number of people who come from very, very non-political backgrounds who've managed to become senators and members of the House. And we're not even looking at states. So
right.
Your
That's at the
statement that
national level.
we don't have a chance. Yeah. Your statement just doesn't make any sense at all, because we can point to not just those examples, but we probably go through history and point to others. Abe Lincoln, for instance, um, people who came from non-political backgrounds who became politicians. So your statement doesn't make any sense at all, given the history and given what we see currently today. It just doesn't make any sense.
What we see currently today is the rich getting into the elected positions and taking power.
Agreed. But
I haven't denied that.
That in no way validates your statement.
Because there are two things that are true at the same time. Yes, the rich people do get into power, into political power. However, it is also true that people who aren't rich, like the people we mentioned, AOC had to go and buy had to wait for her first paycheck as a congresswoman to get the wardrobe she needed to participate. She didn't even have the wardrobe. So again, there are two things that are true at the same time, and for you to just declaratively wave your hand and deny this other truth is just nonsensical.
So, what's your proposed solution? Because I currently live in the United States, and I'm a veteran. I was born here, and even though Trump's getting rid of birthright citizenship, or he'd like to try to, but he won't, I'm a citizen. I was in the military. I'm eligible to run for government. I could run for local government. I could run for city council. I could run for boards of education. I could run for state representative. I could run for United States representative. I could run for any of those things and be a part of the government. And even if I'm not an elected official, I'm still participating in the system by voting. If you have a model that is better, what is it, and how do you change the United States to that model?
The model that we should be living under is, like I said, voluntary consent, where everyone goes out and interacts in a way with each other, where they represent themselves on the local stage and the global stage and make decisions on their behalf for themselves and their family without someone else signing pieces of paper and having those pieces of paper enforced to go out and do those things on the people's behalf, like what governments do.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but
how does that work in practicality when someone's got to make a living and put food on the table?
Well, for starters, if there wasn't a government like this, it'd be a lot easier to do that because there would be no income taxes.
Okay, Dominic,
Again,
how do you pay for anything without income taxes?
Well, I go to the store myself and buy things there, which are produced by people who are not in the government.
How did that stuff get to the store? Were they transported on the freeway?
Yes, but there's alternatives.
How did the freeways come about? How did the freeways come about?
Through taxes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, what you're suggesting is not just anarchy in the sense of voluntary consent, which is fine. It's also anarchy in the sense that you don't have an acceptable, understandable model, and you keep describing it rather sloppily, which is through our voluntary consent, we will each protect our own rights. Well, that's not how shit works, because I'm here to protect the people who can't necessarily protect themselves. What do you do on their behalf, Dominic?
Well, you just said you can protect them. You don't need some agency
Dominic,
or
you're not listening.
institution to do it for you.
No, Dominic, you're not listening. I'm protecting their rights that are guaranteed by the government. That is how I protect them, by getting the government to guarantee their rights. What can you do in your anarchist voluntary consent model to protect the queer kid down the street from being marginalized?
Well, first of all, marginalization is not inherently wrong. What would be inherently wrong is if they were going out there and assaulting him. What would be wrong is if they were going out there and assaulting him or harassing him or actually harming him in ways because
you think it's only wrong. Shut up. You think it's only wrong if they're physically harming him and not if they're denying him the right to live his life or work.
Those aren't rights. Those are privileges. Rights are actions that people do with their bodies.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry,
know
but you
You
have a
need to give
I,
me a
I
definition
didn't.
of
I'm
right
sorry,
because
but you have a particularly stupid definition of rights that you change as it's convenient for your bullshit.
I did not
Stop
change it.
talking.
I
Stop talking.
didn't provide
Stop
a
ta- okay, I'm
definition
gonna
for right.
here. Look, congratulations, Dominic. You get to be muted now, and whether or not you ever get unmuted, we'll see. I'm talking about. You asked me what rights were, and I said they are permissions protected by law. Now you're saying rights are actions. No. Oh, Dominic ran away. Dominic
okay,
protected his own batshit idea by not agreeing to participate anymore, which is exactly what he's advocating. He's advocating
right.
don't participate in the government of the United States. Let's build a new government right in here. And it would be much easier if there wasn't already a government to struggle with. But who cares? You know what would be great? If the government we had was just better. That'd be great.
Right.
It's been better. Oh,
Yeah.
Dominic.
He doesn't understand how things work, and he doesn't want to understand how things actually work. Why humans come together to form tribes, which is a form of government, tribal government, and form other forms of government and form societies and groups. And it's because not everybody wants to, you know, carry a gun to defend their rights, their rights and their lives. So he just doesn't understand history.
Yeah.
Which is fine. He
All
doesn't
right.
have to. That's what the rest of
Yeah.
us are for, right?
It's one of those things where Dominic's probably one of those people who have ideals based on their personal preferences, and the world just doesn't work that way. And so it's like, what do you, how if you're not going, if you're only working to protect yourself, then who protects the people who can't protect themselves? Not my problem. Who guarantees that they have a right to work? That's not a right. Hang on. Should you have a right to work? How are you going to protect your right to work, Dominic? If right to work isn't a right, and it's not one that you're willing to protect for anybody else, it's also not a right you're willing to protect for yourself because you say rights are actions. And by the way, rights are permissions to take actions. They are also permissions to not take actions. You have a right to not have certain things happen to you. You have a right to not be compelled to testify against yourself. You have a right to not do X, Y, and Z. So you're fundamentally wrong about what rights are.
And Europe even has a different attitude because we, here in the United States, we look at rights as a right to do,
Yeah,
and much of Europe looks at it as a right from, right? A right to not have things happen to them. So there's even two different ways to look at that, but none of that changes the fact that a right is is legally protected, and you can't just go start redefining that to just action. So I can take whatever action I want. What's to stop me from using my actions to enforce my will on you? And
exactly.
there's absolutely nothing to stop that, right?
That's why I went to the extreme of I think I should have a right to kill you.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And yes, the government is the person or group of people who have a legal right to kill. You just
And
can't get
it's
around that politics. Yeah.
yep. I have here my own little copy of my pocket copy of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and I'm reminded both by it and some people in chat, this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and that the preamble begins with "We the people." In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States. It is the power of the people from the beginning that permits this. Now, that doesn't mean you end up with a perfect system that can't be exploited. You end up with imperfect systems all the time because they're created by people, and they can all be exploited, and I think they have been. And while Dominic may have some really good ideas or some preferential ideas about, I don't need a piece of paper from the government saying I have the right to, plant seeds in my backyard. Well, what if the seeds you're planting are harmful to your neighbor's property or harmful to other people? What if you're planting seeds for something that produces a drug that is harmful? Oh, we should legalize all of it. This is the problem with the far end of the libertarian wing. I agree with libertarians on many, many, many things, but not on cannibalism, which they tried to put into one of their party platforms at one point, and not on the let's overthrow the government and just let everybody take care of themselves. If you want to work to overthrow a government, that's happened before. And sometimes they turn out better. Sometimes they may not turn out as well. But that may be essential. But if you have a model that you prefer, you also have to come up with a way to instantiate that model. And all he's doing is sitting there going, man, this would be so much better if we didn't have to deal with the government, if we could just do it ourselves. Okay.
Yeah.
Except that when the second you get asked even the slightest difficult question, which is, how do you take care of that kid down the street that can't take care of himself? And it could be a queer kid. It could be a handicapped kid. It could be a kid with a mental deficiency, a physical deficiency. It could be a kid that grows up with parents that do not feed them right, treat them right, discipline them. Maybe the parents are abusive. What right do you, as an anarcho-libertarian, have to go into that house and save that kid from those abusive parents? Oh, I'm going to say I have that right, and I'm the one that protects it. So that means I can go march in and do whatever I want. Yes, that's the problem. That the same right and oversight that allows you to march in and save a kid could allow you to march in and kill somebody.
Yeah. And we've had that. It's called the Dark Ages for a reason, right? When Rome finally fell, anarchy reigned. So we ended up with feudalism and all kinds of, and eventually the modern age. But we've done this before, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
We got more callers here. Let's see how this goes. We've got Aiden calling in from New York. Aiden's a theist, pronounce him, who says atheism is a net negative for society. How'd you come up with that, Aiden? Welcome.
Hello, Jim. How are you doing today?
Hey.
You good? Yeah, I came up with that because pretty much a lot of groups of atheism is very very rude and not very willing to listen. Bad, evil, they just don't want to listen to the will of God, and they just worship Satan.
How many groups of atheists?
Okay, no, we're done. We're done. Aiden's
what
not.
Do you mean?
No, we're done.
Sorry?
We're done because Aiden's not for real. Aiden is a fraud, trying to make a prank call. Here's the thing. I have a different take on some of these than other people do. I love when Forrest's on, and Forrest will let the trolls go on and on and on and on and on, as long as he thinks there's some good point to make. I agree with that, and that's what my position used to be in the past. As long as I think I can make something, as long as they're talking about something people genuinely believe, and I think we can make a point, I will not say, oh, this is a troll, let's go bye-bye. But let me give you a tip, Aiden. Narrow your focus. If you're going to try and prank us or anybody else in the future, here's a pro tip. Narrow your focus. Don't come in with 2 or 3 ridiculous things. And if I ask you, how do you determine that atheism is a net negative for society? When you start off with, they're rude, they don't want to listen to God, and they worship Satan. None of those things are about society. None of those things are necessarily bad. None of those things are necessarily problematic. And none of those things are necessarily true. So, like Alice tries to believe, I'd like to believe 3, and Alice in Wonderland, the statement, I'd like to believe 3 impossible things before breakfast. Aiden believes 3 impossible, or stated 3 kind of ridiculous things at the start of the call. And that lets me know that Aiden isn't serious and definitely isn't worth wasting time on. And the only time that I would keep Aiden on is when the call-in lines weren't full. But the call-in lines are full. And when the call-in lines are full, every single second we spend on another fake call is a demonstration that we don't care about the people who are on hold who would like to be genuine. So we'll slip off to the side for a quick sideline call from an atheist. Heisenberg is calling in from Australia, wants to talk something about God's sins. So thanks. How are you doing?
Not too bad, mate. G'day, Matt. G'day, Jim. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
I got a proposal that, you've left a couple of things off your list you had before too. I don't know if you mentioned the WHO.
100 things.
And he's also, I've heard this morning that he's issued a ban to the health department to issue health warnings. So if an outbreak happens, you're going to be stuffed for a few crucial hours there. Anyway, I want to propose that God is the most sinful creature in the Old Testament. Not only is he the most sinful creature, but he has himself brought sin into the world. Now, I base this on the 7 deadly sins, and you see in the Bible that a lot of the times God himself commits sinful nature. For example,
excuse me.
Yeah, sorry.
God is incapable of sin because God is above the law.
That's it. That's always the way, not like Trumpy. Yeah. Okay. That's stuffed me up there a bit, mate.
I would also point out that sin means that it's an offense against God. So how does God really can't offend himself? Or can he?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. You and me and virtually every atheist that's spent any time on this we can make a laundry list of the things that this God has supposedly done that are awful and that we view as immoral and everything else. We don't need anybody to make a case for that. We already know. Make the case with the theists and see what their response is, because most of them are just going to be like, oh, God can't sin, or God has his reasons, or God understands things better than I do. So what may look, sinful to me or problematic for me is still morally perfect because God is morally perfect. This particular line of argument it shouldn't be, but it is virtually toothless against believers.
Yeah, immune from prosecution, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Just a couple of other things. Now that the orange maggot is in, and his Christian nationalist scumdogs, how much danger is the Establishment Clause going to be in the First Amendment?
Well, given the number of Christian nationalists that are around him and the fact that he has the primary author of the Project 2025 in his ear,
Yep.
yeah, and we'd already see that, right? He's already trying to end birthright citizenship, which is, constitutional right. The Establishment Clause is also a constitutional right, and so I think effectively he's not going to care. And yeah, it's real possible we'll get a declaration that Christianity is the official religion of the United States, and whether or
Yeah.
not,
I saw him on TV yesterday. He was the one who was handing Trump the things to be signed at the Oval Office desk there. All right. One more thing. I debate CS online a lot, and inevitably things get round to politics, and certainly American politics. And whilst I have no vote in your country, I do have a voice. And the thing is that a lot of things that happen in America, and most things that happen in America, affect us all here in the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you guys to know that there are people all around the world that are on your side. So don't lose heart and keep up the good fight, because we're on your side.
I
appreciate it.
We'll do what we can. Yep.
I'm doing everything I can to not give up. But wow, yeah. But anyway, thanks a bunch.
Okay. And good, and no worries, and good on that bishop lady yesterday too. Good on her.
Yeah, although to be fair,
See you guys.
Yep. Cheers. I think that in this here's my quick take on the bishop. In the standard normal world, I think that would have been highly inappropriate and objectionable for someone who's essentially there to present an ancillary thing to directly address the president and kind of, call for certain things. However, we don't live in that world anymore. And I'm incredibly proud of her for doing what she did. because there are very few people who are going to be willing to stand up to him on these issues. And so if I'm not advocating physical violence, revolution, civil war, none of those things I think are justified yet. But if the worst that somebody can do is say that this kind of mild civil disobedience or shifting of the rules of decorum happened, good. Because that bishop, and people are saying, oh, she's using the teachings of Jesus, and how uncomfortable that the teaching of Jesus, feed the poor and protect the wanderer. But these are being dismissed by the administration. Okay, let's not paint Jesus as the good guy, but at least those are some of the better parts of Jesus' stuff. But this wasn't an insurrection. This wasn't a manipulation of the country's legal system. It was a person who had the opportunity to speak compassion and empathy to a power that has demonstrated neither. And absolute, brilliantly done by her. So yeah, was it a breach of decorum that would have made everybody go, I can't believe she said it? Yes, it was. And you know what? Maybe we need that and a bit more of it.
I'm not so sure it was a breach of decorum for a preacher to preach mercy to the marginalized, mercy to human beings. It does matter if they're marginalized or not, but I'm not sure. I mean, it was at a church service. She just done it, as a PR stunt or a PR thing. Then yeah, I think I would agree with you. But the fact that she was, in church where that kind of thing is supposed to be preached, I don't think it was as much of a breach. But it doesn't really
she
matter
addressed the
because the
president.
reaction to
She addressed the president directly, and it's very rare that I see preachers addressing congregants directly, and it was all done on television. So it's not like it was just a church service. It was the televised inaugural church service. But yes, I get your point.
Yeah, and I don't think the president can't do anything that isn't a publicity stunt, right?
Yes, true.
He can't scratch his own ass without it being.
Well, he can't do that because he can't reach.
Well, well, I mean, he could reach his face.
Oh, there you go. He could reach. Oh, I was talking about Eric. He could reach Eric, but he likes to keep him just out of reach.
Yeah, or along,
Oh yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got another theist. Ash is calling. Pronouns are they, them, from Louisiana, saying, is there a good reason to believe in God? They believe there is. Ash, which God do you think there's a good reason to believe in, and why?
Hi, Matt. Hi, Jim. Well, I don't believe you have to pick that part.
How can you believe in something without saying what it is?
God has many faces, and I believe he appears to people differently. And
that's not what I'm asking.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
You're asking which God I believe in?
Yes. Tell me the characteristics of the God that you think there's reason to believe in. Because if you say God is the universe, I already believe in the universe. I just don't believe it's God. If you say God is a collective consciousness, I don't believe in that either, but I don't see any justification to think that it's God. But when you say you believe there's good reason to believe in God, I want to know, what do you mean by God, and why do you think there's good reason?
I would say what I mean by God is, first of all, God is love and hope and compassion. He's supposed to be the good force in the universe. I believe the reason. I'm sorry. I'm so nervous. I've watched you for years, and I have so much respect for you, and I'm so nervous.
Oh, I'll put a quick stop to that.
So
Jim, go ahead.
If God is love, how do you explain starving children? Is allowing children to starve when you have the power to change that an act of love?
I don't know that God has the power to always change that. I think that requires us interacting with him and doing the right thing too.
Who's doing the right thing? The starving children, their parents?
No. I think it is up to us to do it. When you interact with the supernatural, requires human interaction. It is. I don't
Okay,
believe
but there are
God
people
is
praying,
so
but the children
powerful.
and their families are praying,
Yes,
are in many
yes,
cases praying for food. So
yes.
what aren't they doing right?
They're not doing anything wrong. Absolutely nothing.
And why aren't they getting
It's
food? You just said that
other forces
supernatural requires.
like the government or the greediness humans have, with the resources we fight over. They're starving. That's the result of what we're doing.
So they're interacting with the supernatural as you claim, and other people are preventing God from feeding them.
I suppose so. Yes.
How are they
So God is
preventing
not
God?
omnipotent.
You can only work with the tools you have, and in that situation, God would need us to react to that too.
Why?
Because
Why
Why does
does
God
God
need
need
us?
us?
Even the Bible says God needs us in a way.
Oh, are we talking about the biblical God?
The way it's
Because I
translated, it
don't
would
think
say,
if you list chapter and verse where it says the Bible, where the Bible says God needs us, I would be interested. But I thought we weren't talking about a biblical God. So why does it make a difference what the Bible says?
I follow the Bible. I'm a Christian. I follow
You follow
that
the
philosophy.
Bible. So you're a
Well,
Christian and you follow the Bible, and yet when I asked you which God you were talking about, you defined God as
I'm
different. Hang on, you defined God as different to everybody, and that God is love, hope, compassion, and the good force in the universe. When love, hope, compassion are not proper, they are not a person, not an agent, not a thinking being. And so you're talking about characteristics of God, not what God is, but what God contains or embodies. But if you're advocating for the Christian God in the Bible, then you just advocated for a God in your discussion that does not match the biblical God.
Because how is the flood an act of love?
the flood. I mean, I'm looking into that right now. The flood, I believe, from what I'm trying to put together here, and from what I'm reading from scholars, the flood is actually a result of the B'nai Elohim, or the Nephilim, and God trying to get rid of them and what their ancestry has become.
Okay.
So
Ash,
what? I mean, that's not an act of
you have
love, right?
bought
Because
into, no, Ash, you have bought into
Okay.
some ridiculous, batshit crazy conspiracy theorists.
I'm sorry you
Um,
feel that way, sir.
It's not a feeling; it's a
I'm
fact.
not trying to tell
You are
you
not.
that you're
You are
wrong.
not. I'm sorry, but it's a fact. You are not advocating for anything biblical. You are advocating for pop conspiracy theories about the biblical. The notion that the biblical God couldn't defeat Nephilim, hang on, like that is absurd. The God of the Bible, there is nothing he cannot do. Wow.
Believe
Okay.
so.
I'm sorry. The God of the Bible, there's nothing he cannot do. There are things he will not do, but nothing he cannot do. So what you're describing is not the biblical God.
What I'm describing, or what I'm doing my best and failing, unfortunately, to do, or trying to describe, is the way the biblical God was viewed in antiquity, not modernly. There are so many modern additions, starting
viewed
with
in
the
antiquity by
Romans,
who? By who?
by the people who believed in him, by Judea, also by the Sumerians,
Right, but the
by
Jews have
they
the Jewish folks have a fundamental difference between what Christians believe and what the Jews believe in terms of how that God gets defined. So how do you reconcile that?
well, the Yahweh came about from Yahwism, and I believe at some point El Elyon, the god of the high god of the Ugaritic pantheon, was conflated to be
The,
Yahweh. They became one, even though Yahweh started out as a storm god.
yes, you're entirely correct. Yahweh is a minor storm god of the Canaan pantheon, and
Yes.
and yes, So there is. So you believe there are multiple gods, not just one God.
I believe God has multiple faces and multiple abilities.
That's not what you just said. You just admitted that there's a pantheon of gods that the Canaanites believed in, which is true.
Yes.
And Yahweh was a
Yes.
minor storm god from that pantheon.
So let's redirect for a second. Let's redirect for a second. Instead of talking about where the words came from or anything else, you're advocating for a version of the biblical God. What is your reason for thinking that belief is justified?
I needed it. I just didn't have
I'm sorry.
anything else, and
I need $1 million. I need $1 million. Does that mean that it's reasonable for me to believe that I have $1 million?
I tried to describe God as love and hope and compassion, and those were the things I needed. I needed something to believe in, something above myself.
Ash, does whether or not you need something have any bearing at all on whether or not it's true?
Whether or not it's absolutely true, no, sir.
Then why, when I asked you, when I asked you what reason do you have for thinking it's true, did you go with because I needed it?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said why I wanted to believe in it.
No, I didn't ask. See, the phrase, stop talking. The phrase wanting to believe will almost never cross my lips because I don't believe belief is a doxastic choice. I asked what reason you had for believing that it was likely to be true.
I suppose the reason I have to believe it's true, those are all very personal, and it's not something that I could use as empirical evidence.
Okay. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Is it okay?
I'm not going to hang up yet. But
is it reasonable to believe in things without evidence?
Yes and no. No, mostly, but sometimes you need to. Sometimes you don't believe in yourself enough, and you need to believe in something else.
We're not talking about belief in yourself. We're talking about believing in things that are true, right? We're not talking about belief in oneself. We're talking about things that believing in things that are true without evidence. So would it be okay for me to believe without evidence that Elon Musk eats babies?
No. Of course not.
Okay. Would it be okay for me to believe without evidence that 1 + 1 = 3?
Math is a little weird on that, but no, not.
Okay. So what makes it okay for you to believe in something without evidence? What makes it okay to believe in something without evidence?
I would say okay as long as you don't use it to do any harm.
So yes, how do you come to correct conclusions from evidence that is not, may or may not be true? How do you make good decisions from bad data?
Well, even in a lie, there's some evidence of truth. There always is. That's the part you have to look for. That's not answer the question.
How do you come to a good decision from bad data?
You're going to have to use your own intuition.
In other words,
is your intuition a reliable path to truth? Hang on, this is real easy. Ash, do you care more if your beliefs are true or more if they're comforting?
I do care very much if they're true. I do use them for comfort, and I have no problem admitting that.
Why is it when I get to what could be the crux, once again, we're back to you not answering the question. Do you believe, do you care? Hang on. I'm saying the question again. Do you care more that your beliefs are true or that they are comforting?
I would care more that they are true.
Then, please demonstrate, when I ask you what reason you have for believing in God, did you go to something that would demonstrate truth, or did you go to something that would demonstrate comforting?
I suppose I went to comfort. Yes, sir.
Cool. I don't care if it's comforting. I care if it's true. So what reason do you have to believe it's true? Not what reason do you have to believe it's comforting? That was the question I initially asked. What reason do you have to believe it's true? And you avoided the truth issue, went to comfort. So let's throw out comfort, because if there's a God,
Okay.
it's true for everyone, whether it's comforting to them or not. So what reason do you have to believe not that it's comforting, but that it's true?
I don't know how to answer you because I feel like everything I'm going to answer is just going to sound like avoiding the question.
That is literally
It's something
avoiding
that-
the question. That is literally just avoiding the question, and it is dishonest as fuck. I asked you what reason you have to believe it's true, and now you're saying you stop. Now you're saying you don't want to answer because anything you say, I'm going to have an objection to. Either that is you acknowledging that it's either acknowledging that you are going to be irrational and I'm not going to accept it, or you don't care more about whether it's true than whether it's comforting, and you don't have evidence that it's true. What's the answer here?
I do not have evidence that it is true, sir. I can't present that.
Then I don't have any
But I can
interest.
present is there are good reasons to believe, but that goes into philosophy, not.
Oh, please lecture me
tangible
about
evidence.
philosophy.
I've no interest to do that. You probably know far more than I do on that.
Probably. But
I would
how much
assume
I
you do,
know,
sir.
how much I know and how little you know is irrelevant to whether or not you have a reason that makes it believable.
Yes. My reason is I can't explain, but I saw things and I felt things, and I don't. My reason is so personal. It doesn't seem to matter empirically. I don't want to tell people you have to believe in God. I don't want to tell anyone you're wrong not to. I just
This
think
is an
there's
incredible
You don't
tactic.
believe in the God of the Bible, and you do not believe in the Great Commission in the Bible. So when you say you're a Bible believing Christian, how do you square that? The fact that the Bible directly tells you to go out and tell everybody what to believe and how to believe it.
That's how it's interpreted. But first of all,
That's how
Jesus is talking
the
to
whole
me.
book is interpreted. You can't get around that. And that is the most
That's the
common
problem.
interpretation.
That we negotiate with it every time we read it. Everybody negotiates with the Bible.
If everybody has their own interpretation of the Bible, how do you determine whose is right? You've got right now a group of people who interpret the Bible to say that the LGBTQIA community does not have a right to exist, and you have a group of Christians who believe they do. How do we determine who is right using the Bible?
Using
If
the Bible,
everybody's
well, we go
interpretation
to
is different?
it's Dr. Dan McClellan has been putting out a series on that specifically about how the Bible is not anti-homosexual, although most of that is a mistranslation, like in Sodom
That's
and Gomorrah.
irrelevant,
That's
Ash.
irrelevant. How do I
irrelevant.
determine if McClellan is right or this or the the evangelical right wing who believe it? How do I determine who is right? If it's all open,
Well,
as
what's
you
doing
claim,
harm?
open to everybody's interpretation, who's right? How do you determine that? If it's open to everybody interpreting it.
The center of the Bible is supposed to be Christ. He's supposed to be the Messiah who saves us. And he said specifically, the greatest commandment, first to love God, but then to love your neighbor as yourself. And on these two laws hang all the prophets and laws. So
Yes, but if I conclude that being LGBTQIA is a sin against God and I love my neighbor, then should I not do everything in my power to convince them that they are not right as the greatest act of love? Oh, I
No,
shouldn't try
God
and
gave
turn them to God's love and turn them away from being banned by God because I love my neighbor, is what you're saying.
No, you should have faith in your God. You present whatever you
It's
feel you
exactly what
need
we're
to them,
talking
and then
about.
that's
We're
what
talking about people
God
who have faith in their
where they
God,
go.
who interpret the Bible to
Yes.
be anti-LGBTQIA, and because they
What
love their
I'm
neighbor as themselves, they're going to go and do things like what the Westboro Baptist Church does.
what I'm trying to say is they should have faith in God and leave that in God's hands,
They do,
not go to their neighbor. No, they
but
go
they
to their
love their
neighbor and they're
neighbor
trying to
as
make
themselves. So
profit.
if you love your neighbor as yourself, should you prevent them from doing things that will get them punished for eternity? Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
told not.
This is the problem. This is a problem that you as a Christian have to figure out, right?
I know,
Because
and
everybody
I
who
promise you,
disagrees
I'm
with
doing
you.
my best.
Well,
No, you're not.
let me let you on a little secret. If we call every color blue, does the color yellow exist?
Yes, it does.
Not if we call it blue.
No matter what we call it. We can call it
If
whatever we
everybody
want.
has a different interpretation, does anybody have the right interpretation?
How can we even know
No.
what the right interpretation is?
That's
I've been
what we're
asking that
asking.
question. That's the question we're asking. And here's
Oh,
here's the
I'm
real
sorry.
problem. One,
I took that the wrong way. Forgive me.
no, you
We're
said it
told
the
to
right way.
simply move in love.
You,
Okay. We're told to
you
move in
said it the
love,
right
and
way.
if we're not doing that, that's wrong.
Ash, I
When
don't care.
people
We're talking
act,
about
Ash,
love.
stop. Ash, I don't give a fuck what
yes,
the Bible says or what you think the Bible says. I only care about what you can demonstrate to be true. And I'm really irritated that you just skip past that to go and ignore every possible objection that we can come up with about the Bible.
I'm not
And it's like,
trying to ignore your objections. I'm trying very hard to answer them.
well,
Right.
maybe
I
interrupting me
understand.
again will fucking work for you, but I don't think so. When you then go on to talk about what Dan McClellan says about gay people, when it wasn't relevant, what Jim did was pick an example that isn't even in the
Mhm.
Bible. It's an interpretation that people have. Westboro Baptist Church are in the God hates homosexuals group, and the bishop that spoke there is easily in the God doesn't hate homosexuals group. Which one is on better ground from a biblical standpoint without pointing to anybody's interpretation? Does the Bible condemn homosexual acts?
No.
Yes, it does. If a man lies with a man as he lies with a woman, they're committing an abomination or deserving of death. That is a condemnation of men having sex together.
If I understand Dr. McClellan correctly, the actual
Don't you dare.
problem. Okay. Well, what do you want me to do,
Because
sir? People have changed what the
I want you to
said.
listen and think. I want you to listen and think and stop just spewing out whatever you've heard because you bought into conspiracy theorist crap. Here's the thing. The Bible has a statement that says,
Bible
if man lies with a man, would you stop fucking interrupting me?
Same to you, sir.
Okay.
So
Here, now you're fucking muted. Now you can't interrupt. The Bible has a statement clearly that is easily, at face value, understood to be a condemnation of at least some homosexual acts. That is undeniable. You can then begin to interpret what those words mean, and was it actually talking about general homosexuality? Was it talking about a specific version of it or anything else? But in all of those varieties, the Bible still says, if a man lies with a man as he lies with a woman, they've committed abomination and deserving death. Here's the easy part. I'll unmute you for this one, Ash. Does the Bible ever say that gay sex is okay?
No, it does not specify that.
It does. It never says that. And when it goes through and it lists who you can and can't have sex with, it prohibits certain male-female interactions, like you can't sleep with your father's wives,
right?
Which is also an implicit sanctioning of having wives.
Yes,
You
sir.
can't sleep. You can't sleep with this. It doesn't prohibit father-daughter sex, but it does prohibit all these others. And at no point does it say that it's okay to have sex, including the fact that the Old Testament prescription was if a man lies with a man, blah, blah, blah. Jesus came many years after that Old Testament passage was written. If Jesus is God, why didn't Jesus correct those Old Testament passages and say, you know what? Gay sex is okay. You know what? You shouldn't have slaves. Why didn't Jesus do that?
I would say, first of all, maybe he made a mistake, or
Is Jesus
it
God?
wasn't. No,
So you say you're a Christian and you say Jesus isn't God?
I think he is of divinity, perhaps, yes, but not God. No.
Did Jesus say, if you've seen me, you've seen the
He
Father?
was still at that point, sir.
Does the,
Sorry?
does the Bible in its current form advocate for a Trinity, a Godhead?
Yes,
So doesn't the Bible in its current form advocate for Jesus as God?
yes, it does, sir.
So you are taking a position that is in opposition to what the Bible says and calling yourself a Christian.
I am taking a position that is in opposition to what the Council of Nicaea changed about the Bible, sir.
Ah, okay. Well, I have zero interest in these post hoc rationalizations where you are trying to find a way to make something for which you have no evidence and for something that none of us should believe to be more comforting to you. You're preferring, oh, the Council of Nicaea changed this, which is, by the way, a load of bullshit. The Council of Nicaea did codify a number of things, but the notion that they changed whether or not gay sex was okay or whether or not Jesus was presented as God.
Not that. I believe that. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, you did. And I'm done. Whenever Jim's done, we can stop.
I think we're pointing out several flaws, a number of flaws in your thinking. And that's just your thinking about the Bible. And we haven't even gotten into things like there are parts of the Bible that cannot be literally true because they break the laws of physics. The flood is one of them. We haven't even talked about there are parts of the Bible that biblical scholars who are Christians agree are are forgeries, like Daniel, like
Yeah.
about half the letters of Paul.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to start quoting Dan McClellan and his research methods, then you have to apply those to the entire Bible. And if you do that, you're going to run into more and more problems. If you're going to interpret the Bible literally, then you have to agree that there are two stories of Eden, that there are two flood narratives in the Bible if you're going to take it literally.
We
You're
just
not
ran
going
out
to
of
take
funds
that
on call in
literally.
studio. So sorry to interrupt, but the caller dropped because we ran out of funds. So I need to call Jimmy Snow real quick, and you guys need to vamp.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Well,
this
continue your
is the
thought, Jim.
problem. Yeah, this is the problem with doing any type of research on the Bible is you have to apply it to everything. You can't just pick and choose. And as soon as you start doing that, you're going to start running into issues. If you're going to go back and look at the original Hebrew, then you need to go and do that for everything and reinterpret everything through that lens. And if you do that, I think you end up being Jewish. You don't end up being Christian. Because everything that Christians think is prophesying Jesus isn't, according to a number of rabbis. So if you're going to apply it to everything, not just a few things. Otherwise, you're going to run into these logical problems because ultimately what you get down to is this is a collection of stories written by human beings for theological purposes, curated by human beings for completely different theological purposes. And none of those have to do with whether or not God is real. Everything has to do with what they think God is like and what God wants. And I'm not saying they're deliberately trying to manipulate people or doing anything that, or that they don't actually believe in God. But that doesn't change the fact that the writings don't support a consistent view of God when you try to apply a consistent methodology to it. It just doesn't happen. So you're going to keep running into this problem every time you turn around when you're trying to get into the Bible.
This is one of the things that I think is most obviously damning about modern revisionist Christianity, because people find things about Christianity distasteful. And that's pretty understandable and normal. But the way they attempt to resolve it is by saying, oh, it was originally different and better, or there's a version that was different and better, or something happened that should be different and better. And they don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to demonstrating that whatever version they preferred is the right one.
All right, we got
We're
funds
not
back.
even getting into.
Oh, Studio is back up and running. Jimmy Snow had to take money out of the trans fund, so we might need some extra donations today. But it is back up and running. Get your calls in.
When I click on host show, it's not up.
Yep.
I just
I'm
clicked
seeing that
on
too.
my shows and host show. Yeah, it looks like someone's got to save and start the show, maybe?
Yeah, I did. It did start, but I don't know if maybe somebody accidentally dropped it. That actually, Jimmy has done that before when he logged in to start the ad fund. So let me try again.
Okay, there it is. I've got it back, it looks like.
Okay,
Maybe
now it should be up.
refresh your screen. Yeah.
So
Hey,
yeah,
all
for
the
everybody
callers,
who was
please call
on
back. We're so sorry.
everybody who was on call before. Wow, it just dropped from me. It just kicked me out
Yeah,
to the
just ended
beginning.
again. I don't know why that's happening.
Yep. Okay,
I will work on
Sorry,
it.
folks. Technical difficulties.
So I'm wondering, in this route. So here's the thing: Ash is someone who is addressing the fact that they needed God, and here's someone who claims to be a Christian, doesn't think Jesus was God. They are a Christian in the sense that they have an esoteric, archaic, conspiracy theorist supported concept of Christianity. They think that what they have is what Christianity should be and what it used to be and what it's supposed to be. It should be and it used to be and it's supposed to be this. And it's been perverted by the Council of Nicaea. It's been perverted by the Catholic Church. It's been perverted by this church and this. It's been perverted in different interpretations. Why the fuck, if God can reveal all this, can man change it to the point where there is confusion and God doesn't step in to correct the confusion? I'm pretty sure the Bible says that God is not the author of confusion. And if the Bible is confusing, which it clearly is, then God is not the author of the Bible by its own admission. Unless, of course, the statement that God is not the author of confusion is a lie, and God is, in fact, the author of confusion. And now that means that God is the author of the Bible. There is this, somebody's going to have to come to terms with, if you actually care whether something's true, you have to find the methods that are most likely to result in truth. If Ash wants to love people and love themselves, they should be able to do that. They don't need a God to do that. If Ash wants hope, they don't need a God for that. But what if Ash wants, what if they want hope for an afterlife? Okay, I don't have any hope for an afterlife. I have no reason to think there is an afterlife. And every second of my actual life every second of my actual life spent focusing on an afterlife is wasted until there's some demonstration that there is some kind of afterlife and that something I can think, do, or say is going to change that, going to determine what afterlife I get. Outside of that, I just want to live.
I think she also missed something very important. She decided that God loved her. She needed love, and she decided that God loved her. She decided she was loved. She made that determination herself. And then by attributing it to a God, she basically gave away that power she just took for herself to say, hey, I am loved, I am wanted, I am needed. And said, no, some God, something outside of me does that. I think it's far more powerful to recognize that you can love yourself, and that's just as valid. as anybody else loving you. And if you have friends or acquaintances, they will demonstrate whether or not they like you. They will give you evidence of that. And that's also much more powerful than some imaginary God.
Yep. Well, apropos of that, we have a caller calling in right now that I'm just going to take while we're queuing up other callers. Clay is calling Pruns or he, him, and it got moved back to the screen room. Don't do that. Clay is calling about the progressive view of God question. Hey, Clay, you're on with Jim and Matt.
Oh, sorry, it was muted for the intro sounds. There you go. You're here now, Clay.
What do you want to say? Clay is terminated. Do we have a call screener that is gone just completely rogue or something?
Our screener has been great the whole night. I don't know what's going on. I think you might have clicked the button at the same time on that one, but it's given me. Okay, Clay, if you wanted to call back in about the progressive view of God question, feel free to do that. This is a caller that was queued up before, so we're going to try this. Is this Walker in Texas?
Yes.
Are you a Texas Ranger?
No.
Do people ask you that all the time?
Sometimes, yeah.
Anyway, I think you had a question about the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Is it reliable evidence for a supernatural God like Jesus?
No. Even if we had no explanation and no guess, it would still not be evidence. Even if it appeared miraculous, that wouldn't be sufficient to confirm the existence of a God. It would just be in the we don't know how it happened. But since it's almost certainly a forgery, it's definitely not.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering that because I had arguments saying that you have no evidence for a supernatural God, and they bring up the Shroud of Turin, and I'm like, there's not it's not reliable.
I would recommend.
The most charitable thing you can say about the Shroud of Turin is that at best, we don't know. Now, it's not entirely true. We've got lots of hypotheses about how it was done and how it could be done, and there's all kinds of research on it. But if you want to be the most charitable thing that you can say is we don't know, and that's the best they can do. And you can't get from we don't know to a God on any supernatural claim. Doesn't matter if it's a Shroud of Turin or not.
I would also recommend that you go to Joe Nickel, NICKELL.com. Joe Nickel's been with the Center for Inquiry for ages. He is one of the world's leading experts on the Shroud of Turin. He has written books and articles about it many times, and is cited even in the main Wikipedia article about the Shroud of Turin. Joe's cited because he also pointed out that there are no examples of a herringbone weave from the time that Jesus would have been alive. And the burial cloths from that area are made of a plain weave. So the weaving of cloths is wrong, but there's also a bunch of other things. And there's weird anatomical problems. So if you look at the shroud, nobody would be wrapped like that. There's no way to get a clean image like that. It's not, even if they just laid it over the top and the bottom, and this was just the one that was folded over the top, that's not how that would work. But also, for me, outside of carbon dating and all this other stuff, the very top of this individual's head touches on the fabric so that you get what would be the backside of the head above it. You would not have that. There's no way to wrap a cloth where this part of my forehead touches this back part, the crown, like that. And then there's tons of others, but Joe Nickel's got really good stuff on this. So I'd recommend digging into his stuff and not just taking what we said and running with it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Sweet. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. So that's Walker. We got some more people calling in. While they're being screened, I think it's worthwhile to not only remind people the line has a podcast, and it started 2 days ago. I don't know if there's a she might be busy. I was like, oh, there might be a banner to put up or whatever else. But you can, in addition to liking and subscribing and going to patreon.com/call-the-line and line merch as well, patrons, which you can become a patron for free, I think they have access to not just the competition that we recently ran, but also the podcast as well. But I'm not sure. But it's a podcast. It's for throwing pods. That's what podcasts are. We're casting pods. We're casting our pods out on the ocean. Soon they're going to come back home on every wave. All right, here we go. Let's try this again. We've got Clay about the progressive view of God. Go ahead, Clay.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I was having some technical difficulties. So
so were we.
I am having, maybe this was divine intervention that my call couldn't get connected so many times, who knows. I am a recently turned atheist, was a Southern Baptist for all of my life. I'm 30 years old now. And one of the things that I find in conversations with my family members and friends, people that, I grew up kind of all believing the same thing, is there seems to be a hesitation of adopting a progressive view of God that is, loving to gay people, that, isn't okay with the slavery that we see in the Old Testament. And then there's another form, some people do a deconstruction, in their later years, and they deconstruct from fundamentalism to a more progressive view of God. As somebody that, deconstructed specifically from a fundamental view, it is interesting because it seems like at a certain point, once you start adopting more progressive views, it almost feels like you're talking about a completely different entity. So in your view, Jim and Matt, what do you guys think is the line, pun intended, about where, the progressive view of God winds up talking about something that is completely outside of what Christianity sees from the Bible?
When you say Christianity sees from the Bible, there's 1,000 different denominations, sub-denominations, and everything else. I don't know that there is such a thing as a single Christianity view of the Bible that makes any sense. I think the more liberal you are in your beliefs, the closer you are to atheism. But that is just because you start running into serious problems that Bass pointed out on many, many occasions when you start ignoring parts of the Bible because you don't like them. So if you think that slavery is wrong and the Bible doesn't support slavery, you've got a lot of verses to deal with that tell you otherwise, and absolute silence from Jesus Christ on the issue. And you have Paul sending slaves back as slaves and their Christian brother. So you've got some reconciling there to do. So I think it's good that we have more liberal churches. And I think it's a step along the way. It's a step in recognizing that maybe the Bible isn't full of good stuff like people think, but there's some serious problematic stuff there too as well.
I think we're seeing a little bit of syncretism again, in that, in the same way that Christianity adopted and merged and blended with other religious ideas, not just religions, but just religious ideas in general. I think you're seeing that again. And what you're seeing is a lot of New Age, which the amazing Randy called Newage, and because it rhymes with sewage, and I completely agree with him and miss him terribly. But these, you've got modern progressive Christians who are buying into crystals and crystal healing, and they've turned God into such a, hey, it's just love and it's you, and you're not doing anything. Here's the thing: if there is a God, that God either cares about who you sleep with or he doesn't. If he does, we should know, because that's important. If God cares for us to know what he wants, what he thinks. But so there's the first problem. Does God want us to know what he thinks about things, what his expectations are, what his requirements are, where his immorality? If the answer is no, then every conversation that we end up having about gods or God is useless. But if the answer is yes, then the onus is on God to make that information clear. And so if God wants us to know that gay sex is wrong or gay sex is okay, God's the one that needs to make that clear. And it hasn't happened, which means either God doesn't care, doesn't want us to know, or, you know, doesn't feel like engaging on that subject. But if God does care and hasn't engaged on the subject, that's God's fault, not ours. And because it hasn't happened, this leads everything open to these hippy dippy, ooh, God loves all the queers, churches. That bishop, as much as I applaud her for being great and doing the right thing under the right circumstances, if I threw on my Southern Baptist hat, well, Clay, you used to be a Southern Baptist. What would you have thought of that bishop as a Southern Baptist?
It's very easy for me to tap back into the mindset because it was so recent, and I am appalled to say that I would have also been on Donald Trump's side in his response. That
exactly.
And there's a lot of people defending the backlash from the sermon by saying, like, oh, as soon as you start accepting, anything from the alphabet, in reference to LGBTQ issues, as soon as you start referencing that or, affirming that from the pulpit, you're no longer talking about a church of God, and just completely dismissing any sort of divine, authority that a bishop might have as somebody that has dedicated their life because they're preaching something they don't believe in. And it's just, it is baffling now. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. What I'm saying is, if we take that view, our old Southern Baptist view, and compare it with the gay-friendly church that she's a part of, only one of those two views can be consistent with the mind of God, correct? Okay. If only one of those views can be consistent with the mind of God, that means one of those churches is wrong. How do we tell which one's wrong? If not both. I mean, they could both be wrong, but how do we tell which one's wrong? Like, can we just use our own opinion? Like, Clay, do you think gay sex is okay or not?
I think it's fine.
Cool. Me too. But that's just like our opinion. If my friend down the street thinks gay sex is immoral and against God, how do we deal with that? How do we tell who's right?
Well, I can't remember who said this specifically, but there was the analogy of, if you lead 6 blind men to an elephant and have them feel, a certain spot, then they're all going to come away with different conclusions as to what the elephant is. And the analogy, and that wouldn't be a terrible analogy if it were actually accurate, because the elephant is the creator of the universe who has thoughts that he's not conveying and is decided to be felt up by a bunch of blind guys instead of engaging with humanity as it is. So that analogy falls completely apart.
Well, and the blind guys aren't actually experiencing. The blind guys aren't experiencing the entire elephant, and they're choosing not to. There's no part of an elephant you can touch that you can't figure out there's more to the elephant than just what you're touching. So the blind guys are also being deliberately ignorant of the rest of the elephant.
There's also a response to that. That is that same analogy of blind men feeling up an elephant. Somebody would say, in the sense of religion, it's also like saying looking for a black cat in a dark room. But religion's actually worse than that, because it's like looking for a non-existent cat in a dark room and finding it.
Well, and then the other big rebuttal that I've used for the elephant analogy is that it's a fine analogy and it sounds good until you really kind of start scrutinizing it, as we've said. And one of the big things is if you can come to different conclusions that are at its core mutually exclusive to each other and deny the other person's conclusions, then you need to then reassess and be like, okay, well, my conclusion is obviously not correct, because we can't all have, completely different mutually exclusive conclusions. And again, I think that's where it sort of gets into the tricky part, is because I have a family member that, they deconstructed from their kind of Southern Baptist roots, just like I did, but they reconstructed under a much more progressive view of God. And from a cultural standpoint, a social standpoint, we very much see eye to eye on a lot of things. And They do a lot of really great work in their church for the community that is not strictly evangelism. It's not like, hey, we need to go spread the love of Jesus, or tell people about Jesus so their souls can be saved. It is actually just like there's people that are in need that we need to take care of, and that's great. But when I start having conversations with them about kind of the more rational backing up of their beliefs, it usually comes down to just a matter of feelings. Oh, I feel like God is this. I feel like God doesn't have hell. I feel like God is going to send everybody to heaven, and maybe annihilationism. And it winds up being so far gone from the biblical texts that it winds up feeling like we're now talking about a different deed.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting because I want to have these conversations, with my more progressive Christian friends and kind of feel this out with them. But I have the benefit of being able to sort of steelman the more fundamentalist side of things and try to argue against that. And again, it winds up being one of those things where if it comes down to that's how you feel and you don't have any sort of real rationality to back it up, that's great. You can do that, I guess. It's not the way I would recommend, finding the core structure of your beliefs, but if that's how you want to frame your view of the world, then I guess there's worse ways to do it, especially if on the same token you are adopting a more progressive view of Christianity that promotes not doing the same sort of harm that more fundamental Christianity has had the history of doing.
Well, I think when you talk about doing harm, I would like to point out that trying to make good decisions on bad data is harmful in and of itself, because you can't get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't be right accidentally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's problematic. But yeah. Well, thanks for the call, and I'm glad you called back a second or third time, is the case. Well, third time, I guess, at this point for everybody, because we lost a call in the studio there. But
Well, and it was. I was listening to the call from Ash, and that's sort of what prompted me, is because as much as I respect, Ash's, stance and that sort of stuff, listening to her argument, it did seem to sort of fall in line to more of the progressive Christianity that I am now kind of in the middle of trying to talk through with my family members, and it is a very interesting. It's almost a complete, about face with a lot of the more Southern Baptist roots that I was raised in, because now you're not really talking. Now people are not interested in defending the actual historicity of the Old Testament. Now people are not as ardent of a defender of Jesus being actually God. There's a lot more things that you can grant or say, okay, well, that's open for interpretation. The apocalyptic Jews of the time would have had a much different view of these texts, and I think there's room for that in still being able to believe in God. But again, at a certain point, you have to sort of take a step back and say, okay, well, do I actually have any rationalized justifications for believing in what I say I believe, especially when it has, such big ramifications on your supposed eternal identity?
Yeah. I mean, literally, I almost interrupted you to ask the very thing that you got to, which is, you phrased it in the way that a lot of theists do when they're struggling with the burden of proof, which is, does this still leave room for me to believe in God? That's the wrong question. There's always room for you to believe in God, as long as you sacrifice being rational, as long as you don't care about evidence, as long as you prefer comfort over truth and other things. Instead of looking for, does this leave room for God? The only thing we should care about is there sufficient evidence to warrant believing that this God is real? And if there's not, then the only rational position is to not believe until such time as that changes. People tend to think that atheism is the assertion that there are no gods and never, absolute certainty that there are no gods and nothing could ever change my mind. And that's not it at all. It is, theism is claiming there's a God, and atheism is saying, I'm not convinced, or in some cases, I'm convinced you're wrong. And depending on the definitions, I think it's obvious that some people are wrong. We at least know that everybody who makes claims about God cannot be correct, because some of those claims are conflicting. If we can't even get through the conflicting claims to figure out who's more likely to be correct, we're stuck. And if we can't begin by saying, here's the good reason to believe in some kind of God, and then narrow down from there, we're also stuck. And that's why I think I've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm new to this compared to, Dan Barker's been arguing this stuff since I was a fundamentalist Christian going to the First Baptist Church of Harvester in St. Charles, Missouri. And I have other friends in the community who've been doing this since I walked down the aisle at the age of 5 at Gashland Baptist Church in Gladstone, Missouri. And all of those people are still new when you go back to, Voltaire and David Hume, and, then get back to the actual discussions that are potentially about the apostles, but not necessarily with the apostles, as if having a firsthand testimony would be sufficient to confirm a God. You could confirm some of the events that happened, but how would you confirm a resurrection? How would you confirm the loaves and fishes? How would you confirm water to wine? A mere reporting of these events can never be sufficient. And if there's a God, that God should know and understand the best epistemology and what our limitations and understanding of epistemology is, and should be able to provide answers to these things in a way that is justified to us. And that never happens.
Well, and it's funny too, because, in the whole atheist YouTube sphere, there's been a recent kerfuffle with Alex O'Connor and Wes Huff. And I was not really familiar with, with any of the claims of, the eyewitness testimonies of Joseph Smith and Mormonism and any of that sort of stuff, just because I'm not familiar with Mormonism. But in researching it and, watching Alex's video, in researching how many eyewitness testimonies we have in regards to the angel Moroni handing the tablets to Joseph Smith, the nature of those claims in regards to the same sort of evidence that people use as sufficient proof in their minds to believe that the Bible exists. It's just like, okay, well then why do you dismiss Mormonism? Why do you dismiss, if you're wanting to go to the textual accuracies of a word for word, alignment of the scriptures, the oldest scriptures that we can find, then how come we can't do that with the Quran? Because there's great evidence for that. And it's just, it winds up feeling like a confirmation bias that oh, well, I believe it, and there must be evidence for it, so let me find the evidence to then confirm the thing I already believe. It's just circular.
Okay, I have put my Jesus hat back on. So first of all, when I debated Citain Bruggencate, he said something that people laughed at and mocked, but he was correct. And he made an argument essentially that says, if the Quran is true, it affirms the Bible, and that makes the Bible true. But if the Bible's true, then the Quran must be false. And similarly, the question from Alex, or that you projected from Alex, I haven't seen it. I don't know what he said. But if Mormonism has these testimonies, why don't you believe Mormonism? It's because Mormonism is a derivative of Christianity. And I don't believe Christianity merely based on those things. I merely presented those things. But if Christianity is true, Mormonism has to be false. And so if two things, even if they have the same evidence, the same testimonial evidence and supporting evidence, if they're in conflict, one of them must be wrong, right? And so it could just be as simple as, oh, I'm deciding to go with the first one. And maybe that's irrational, but if you're going to, I get what Alex is doing, or what you're saying he did. And it's fine to say, you dismiss these other religions that have similar evidence to what you presented for yours. And that's perfectly acceptable. The problem is, for the believer, it's not going to be compelling or convincing, because they know that there's additional evidence, which is that Reformed Egyptian isn't a real language. Joseph Smith was a con man. If you stick your head in a hat and pretend to read a language that doesn't exist, you're a con man. And no matter how much testimonial evidence there is, that contradicts the foundations of Mormonism. Mormonism's bizarrely, ridiculously, the only religion I know of in modern world that is more obviously false and ridiculous than Mormonism is Scientology. And both of them.
I was going to say, what about Pastafarianism?
Pastafarianism isn't a real religion. It's a.
I know. I'm kidding.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because somebody might think it is. So.
No, I'm just joking. And yeah, I mean, I agree. And the reason why I brought those claims up to my fundamentalist friends is because it feels like at a certain point, their belief, they will sometimes divert to say, okay, well, but my belief is justified because of the personal experience I have. I've trusted God with my heart. These outcomes have happened, and that to me is my proof. But as we've as has been demonstrated in this call, that's not a demonstrable proof that other people can use. That's just a totally anecdotal, personal thing. So then it has to come down to historical accuracies, and there are plenty of other claims that are dismissed by most Christians that have just as much, if not more, supporting incredible seeming evidence that they just don't pay attention to. And it's a very frustrating point in the conversation to come to, because they will eventually seemingly just dismiss carte blanche a lot of these other things that have the evidence, while not also being able to see the reflection of why I was able to do that with Christianity, and if they can get to the point, it's like the one more God analogy. If you can get to the point where you're already dismissing all these other religions, then I'm just dismissing one more religion than you. And it feels like it'd be a pretty easy thing for you to also make the jump into dismissing this one more religion.
Well, if we know that somebody was murdered and we start dismissing candidates, if there's only one candidate left, should we dismiss that one too?
That's a fair point. I would say it depends on.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
It depends on the evidence. Yeah.
The nice thing is that we can never dismiss all the candidate options for something like that as a matter of practicality. But on this note, Clay, I appreciate the call and your insights onto this, and best of luck to you continuing on after deconverting. I'd love to talk to you more about it some other time. We got a few calls we want to try and get to before we get to Super Chats today, but yeah, nice talking with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jim.
Take care. Go get that baby some food or something.
Yeah.
Jim, we have more calls.
I know.
And thank you to everybody for filling them up. We're going to take some calls, and then we're going to go move on to Super Chats. It will be reading any Super Chat over $10 that comes in. And that's just so that we're not here all night. It's not, I greatly appreciate, I've seen some, $1 and $2 and $5 Super Chats come in. Don't get me wrong, we greatly appreciate it. You're the reason that Jimmy was able to come up with funding to get the phone call thing started back up again. Honestly, I think it's a good thing for him to let the phone system run out of money on occasion, because it ends up being a reminder that we are paying for this. And so it's not just a matter of, hey, you're potentially being rude to the other people on hold. It's actually costing us money, for. All right. I think this would go badly for me, but I'm me, Jim, there's no way I'm going to prevent myself from jumping in. But calling in, we have Keto, a theist from Virginia, who says intelligent design is a win for the U.S. education system. So, Keto, please convince Jim that it's a win for the education system, and then I'll pay attention.
All right, absolutely. I just feel like that. Also, how you doing, Matt? How you doing, Jim? I just feel like that, intelligent design and Trump being reelected is definitely looking for a bright future for the entire education system. I just looking forward to that.
So I feel you're a complete idiot. So what? It doesn't mean you are, right? Just because I feel that you're something doesn't mean it's true, right?
That's a little rude. I just asked you how your day was, but okay, yeah, go on. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Keto. Maybe you didn't grasp this.
I'm literally asking you, how do my feelings about you reveal any truth about you?
Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay.
Cool.
You're
I just want to clarify, because this wasn't a clapback. This was, hey, here's an example. Just because I feel a certain way. So we asked you, you said intelligent design is a win for the U.S. educational system, and then when we turned you loose to defend it, you just said, I feel like that intelligent design and Trump win is a win. for the educational
Yeah.
system. Well, we don't care what you feel. We
Or-
care about what you can demonstrate.
Yes, sir. I didn't mean to argue over semantics, but I really, it is a win for the U.S. Education system that Trump's reelected, and we can finally start teaching creation back in class once again.
How?
Is that better?
We don't care how you feel. You're doubling
No,
down on your
I'm saying
claim.
it's a win.
So make the argument that intelligent design is a win for the
Mhm.
education system. Because right now,
We got it.
you're not really demonstrating that.
We got to think about it. What do you go to school for? You go to school to learn, all right? And it's important to understand a lot of different avenues of just like education. It's like you have French class, you have science class, you have, and in science class they're taught evolution and everything, but it's important to have different just views on certain topics, especially with evolution. I would say that alongside evolution, we should be teaching intelligent design alongside it, because they're both theories at this point.
Because
they're
this
not.
has been adjudicated.
No, they're not.
This has been adjudicated.
They're not theories.
In a court of in a court of law that intelligent design is not scientific, which is why it cannot be taught alongside evolution, which is a scientific concept. So,
The court of law. Yeah.
you need to prove
Well,
that
the thing
intelligent
is-
design actually coincides with science. How does it do that?
Well, the thing is, it was, I did hear about that court case, but let me ask you a question. Do you believe that O.J. Simpson was guilty of killing his wife?
Based on the evidence, I think it's highly likely.
And what was the verdict?
The jurors did not agree with that. So what? I don't. What's your point?
My point is that there can be court cases where the result doesn't, it isn't parallel with the evidence quite right. You know what I mean?
And I
so
just
that
asked
way-
you what the evidence for intelligent design was. So get to it. We've been asking this here from minute one. Get to the evidence for intelligent design.
Are you going to ignore my entire point, though? You're not going to acknowledge the point I just made?
You didn't make a
It
good
just
point
did.
because the argument wasn't,
do it.
this is, no, you didn't. You didn't make a good point because the argument was not, hey, this is not science because a court said so. It was, this is not science and even a court has said so. You know who else says so? Scientists.
says so?
The bulk of the scientific
No.
community says that intelligent design is not science. It's not
No.
a theory. It is not testable. It is not falsifiable. The Discovery Institute nor anybody else has demonstrated in any way to show that intelligent design rises to the level of science. You can keep trying to interrupt me as much as you want, you little prank calling prick, and it's never going to happen. I'll drop you like a hot rock. But I'm telling you that that wasn't the argument made.
So the fundamental problem with intelligent design is simply this. How do you determine if something is designed or not?
Yeah, so how do you determine something designed or not? It depends on the complexity of the system being designed. Absolutely, I have to say. So
No,
if you
it
look
doesn't.
What do you
at
mean by complexity? What about
Yeah.
complexity indicates design?
So the
And
more
what do you mean by
simple,
complexity?
the more simple a system is, the less likely it is that that system was designed. You know what I
Well,
mean?
then you weren't
Wrong.
designed.
So
You weren't designed because
you
you're about as
you are
simple.
completely-
You are about as simple as I could fucking imagine. And you're coming in with these cartoonish things. None of us believe you're legit right now. Why are you doing this?
So
Well,
the
Matt, I
problem
will
with-
say
the
you are
problem with
being
your-
incredibly dishonest because you said you're going to sit this one out. I thought I was going to talk
Yes.
to Jim about this.
Well, we also
yes.
said
You're being
he
dishonest
knew
right
he
off the
wouldn't.
bat.
But I'm
So, and
also
you
the
also
head
said you knew you
motherfucker in
wouldn't set it out,
charge,
so.
and I've talked to you before, and you're a lying, fraudulent little troll.
Yeah.
And so all
we
you
get back-
do is every time I catch you out, you say something to distract or deflect instead of actually engaging. So here's your one question. The one question.
Again, simplicity is actually a better hallmark of design than unnecessary complexity. And let me explain what I mean by that. We have two types of engines. We've got gasoline engines and we have diesel engines. Diesel engines are less complex than gas engines because they do not have the same ignition system. They don't need spark plugs. They don't need an alternator, or excuse me, a distributor cap. They don't need any of that. They work through compression. So they are simpler. But does that mean they're a better design? And the answer to that is no, because there's two different types of fuel that get ignited in two different ways. One can get ignited through heat and pressure, and the other one actually does need a spark to get ignited. So when you say complexity versus simplicity, you have to look at unnecessarily complex. And what we see in nature is nothing but unnecessarily complex things, which means they're not designed. And simplicity is always better than complexity for designing anything. And I say this as a software engineer who's seen some incredibly stupidly complex things that were not designed by software engineers, believe it or not. It happens. But this is the problem you have with just looking at it's saying complexity is a hallmark of design, because it's not. Simplicity is. A thing should be as designed as simple as possible and no simpler, right? There's the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid, right? So there's no way you can get
I'm
there from
stupid.
there and look at it from an engineering point of view and say the complexity is a hallmark of design, when anybody who designs anything, mechanical engineering, software engineering, electrical engineering, all the engineering disciplines will agree that simple is better. Go ahead.
So I tried to unmute Keto just to see if he had stopped long enough to listen and figure out when it's time to interrupt, and he decided to suggest that you were calling him stupid because you used that aphorism of "keep it simple, stupid." So
No, it's
Keto,
KISS. It's literally keep it simple, comma, stupid. The stupid refers to the person saying it, not you.
yeah,
So
it's
maybe
for
you
all
need to
of us.
learn to listen. Yeah, you need to learn to listen, Keto, because that's twice now you've taken something completely out of context. So you're looking for a fight. You're not looking to actually have a discussion. But
So
I will go back to simplicity is the hallmark of design, not unnecessary complexity.
Is
back.
it my turn? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm listening to what you're saying, and you do bring up a valid point. I was talking to Forrest the other day, and we were talking about if computer code and DNA, because you said you're a computer scientist, and when me ask a computer scientist this. Also, I'm granting you that point. All right, so that's Keto 3. You guys won. So if
You haven't made a single valid point yet. Where do you get your 3 from?
Oh, he got his 3 right now when I hung up on him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I don't know where you got your 3 from. You haven't made a single valid point. You just made a bunch of claims, and then when I pointed out that the one claim that you made that I decided to engage on, you were completely wrong on. So I'm not really sure where you got that from. But again, DNA is code, so is Morse code. There's a really fun little language called brainfuck that was just recently used by some folks out, I think, Texas, to demonstrate that you could actually get auto-generating code out of it. I got to go back and reread the discussion again, but really, really interesting on dealing with how you go from things that anyway, just no, DNA is not programming code, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Well,
It's
let's
just
try
chemicals doing
again.
chemical stuff.
Let's try again with somebody who's hopefully serious and honest. David in Indiana, pronouns are him, says God will convince you if you're open to it. David, is there any way to show that your claim that God will convince us if you're open to it? Is there any way to show that that's false or true?
I guess try it and see. But if you're not interested,
How do you know we haven't?
Yeah. My
Why
point
do you
is,
say we haven't?
my point is, if you're claiming that God will reveal himself if you're open to it, then you get to say that everybody who hasn't had a revelation simply wasn't open to it, correct?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so is it possible for someone to be open to it and for God to still not reveal himself?
I suppose it would be, yeah.
Well, you called in to say that God will reveal himself or convince you if you're open to it. So now what it seems you're saying is God will convince you sometimes if you're open to it. How is that statement useful?
Well, really, my point is that if you're not open to it, you won't.
Okay.
So
Now we're at a different. Now we're in a completely different statement. So you're saying if you're not open to it, God will not reveal himself to you, right?
If you don't want it, there's no point in looking for it.
Okay. Jim just asked, how do you know that's true?
Well, actually, I was
How do you know
asking,
it's
can
true?
you define what you mean by open
Oh,
to
sorry.
it? Because both
Yes.
Matt and I Matt and I are both former Christians. I'm a former Catholic. He's former Southern Baptist. So we were
Right.
at one time very open to it, and at one time we both believed, and then we examined the evidence and realized that we didn't have any good reason to believe. So when you say open to it, what do you mean?
Well, then we're no longer open to it.
Oh, so God convinced us until we weren't open to it? How does that work?
No, well, I don't know. I don't know exactly how that works. I mean, if you're a part of a religion,
If you don't know how it works, how can you make if you don't know how it works, how can you make the statement God will reveal himself to you if you're open to it, if you don't know how open to it works?
Because he's not going to help you if you don't want the help.
How do you
if
know
you're in
that?
a religion like
But we did want to help. But see, that's the problem, though. Matt and I both started from a point of view, and Matt, you'll jump in on me if I'm misspeaking in any way. But we both started from the point of view we wanted to know as many true things as we possibly could. We wanted to know if our faith was true, and when we examined the evidence for our faith, we found it not to be true. We were open to and hoping to find out that it was true. But we didn't. We came to the opposite conclusion. So where was God in this process? And how do you prove your statement given this process that we both went through?
I would never join an organized religion. So
That's
I
not
think
an
that
answer.
It's not an answer to the question. That's not even close to an answer to the question.
Most people that are in organized religion aren't really looking for God. They're looking for something else.
Sir. I'm sorry, sir, but Jim just went to great effort to address something, and you're not answering the question. I don't need you to tell me what about most people in organized religion or what you would do. I need you to answer Jim's question.
Because I just said both Matt and I started looking for the evidence that our faith was true and that God existed. I don't care about what other people did. Everybody has an experience, but Matt and I both started from this position. We both ended up atheists. So how does that work? You said, I don't know how that works. And then I asked, then how can you make the claim that God will reveal himself to us if we're open to it? When Matt and I were not only open to it, we were actively seeking it.
Did he?
Did he what?
How long were you a part of the religion? And did he at that time?
My entire life, my entire life up until I was about 30.
So then can I assume that he had?
You could assume that. But where was he when I was looking for the evidence? Where was he when Matt and I were looking for the evidence? Where was he?
Apparently right there.
Apparently.
Apparently.
He didn't come to that conclusion. So why didn't he put the evidence for his existence in our path since we were actively looking for it?
For 30 years? He didn't?
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't understand that. Then what were
there
you
you
doing?
go. Well, I was actively looking.
But you didn't have it.
I didn't find
How long do you think it would take? Okay, here's my point. My point is Jesus hid his message so unbelievers wouldn't get it.
Well, here's something that's even funnier.
His message?
Do you know why Matt and I do this show right now? You know the number one reason why Matt and I do this show? Well, maybe the number two, because we both have egos. But because we're still looking for the fucking evidence. And you just went, if you're open to it, God will reveal himself to you. We both were open to it, and he didn't, proving your statement to be false.
But I don't understand how you could do that for 30 years if he hadn't.
Okay, the fact that you can't understand it doesn't change the fact that you are now making claims that you cannot demonstrate. How can you demonstrate that God has ever interacted with anyone at all?
How can I demonstrate it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What, give you a testimony?
No, testimony. Is testimony proof of anything?
I wouldn't think so. Well, it's.
I wouldn't either. So why did you suggest that? I'm asking if there's
In
any
a
way
court
for
of
you to
law, would you
demonstrate.
do
I'm asking you if there's any way for you to demonstrate that God has ever interacted with any person.
without testimony? How would I do that? I mean, you'll have to give
I'm
me
not,
some.
David, this isn't my problem. I'm not the one making claims about God. How you do it is up to
Exactly.
you, not up to me. I'm asking, is there any way for you to demonstrate that God has ever interacted with anybody? Yes or no?
But how you do it is your problem,
No.
not mine. See,
David?
that's the point.
David,
You just
it's a
made my
yes or
point.
no question. David, it's a yes or no question. Are you able to demonstrate that God has ever interacted with anyone? Yes or no?
How would I do that? I don't know what you mean by demonstrate.
David, it's a yes or no question. When you say, how would I
I
do
know.
that?
You want me
That's
to say
not,
yes or no?
shut up. That's not my
You shut
problem.
up. Fucking
Okay.
you little prick. You shut up. You tell me to shut up.
I'm going to ban you. Bye-bye.
Uh, So
I'm
this
sorry
is the
that this is
fundamental
so
problem.
difficult.
Matt and I are both open to the any evidence that people could provide. What people run into is the fact that Matt and I have heard this evidence before. Matt has heard it a lot more than I have, many more times, and it's always the same evidence. This caller was not the first time either one of us have heard, if you're open to it, God will reveal himself to you, or God will reveal himself to you if you're open to it. Doesn't matter which way you put those two phrases, it's the same thing. And Matt and I were both open to it. Matt and I both did these things. And if you're going to claim we didn't do them right, then you need to tell us how to do it right.
I'm sorry, David, that you've never thought about whether or not you have good reasons for your belief or whether or not you can demonstrate them. But it's not up to me to tell you how you need to demonstrate your belief. You became convinced that there is a God and that God has interacted with people. If you became convinced based on testimony alone, you have become convinced for bad reasons because testimony is insufficient to demonstrate that a God interacted with someone. There needs to be something else because I can claim that God interacted with me and you can claim that God interacted with you. And I can say that when God interacted with me, he told me that you were full of shit. When God talked to me, he said, David's never actually interacted with me. How do you demonstrate? How do you figure that out? I'm sorry that you haven't thought of those things, but these are the types of questions that you're just going to be asked. Because if you can't demonstrate that there is a God and that God has interacted with anybody, and you can't demonstrate what the justification is for saying that God will interact with you, you only have a couple options there. You either admit that you don't have good reasons for your belief, or you cry like a little baby about how somebody needs to just be nicer to you while you're sitting there refusing to answer a yes or no question because you know that the answer is no. That makes you dishonest with us and with yourself. You know that you have no way to demonstrate that God has interacted with anybody because if you had a way, you'd have just done it. Instead, you wanted to pretend like we needed to tell you how to do that. It's up to the individual who's making a claim and attempting to justify it. This is how an argument based on evidence works. You have to say, I'm convinced of this proposition, and I'm convinced for these reasons. And if the proposition is God interacts with people, and you say, I do it just based on testimony, and I say testimony isn't sufficient, and you say, how else can I do it? What you're basically saying is, I have no way to do it other than testimony. And since testimony doesn't do it either, you have no way to do it. You might as well be saying, I have no way of proving it other than I asked the magic mirror and that's what it told me. Ooh, I'm not going to accept what the magic mirror says. Well, then that's too bad. You're just too skeptical if you won't just take my word for what the magic mirror said. I'm sorry that you don't get this. But when you are not engaging honestly with us or yourself, we're going to keep asking the same question. And then you, as a representative perhaps of Christ, look really foolish. And especially when Jim or I could defend your beliefs better than you can. I keep my Jesus hat around, not to keep my head warm, but to make the point that I'm an atheist because I took this shit seriously. Because I cared about what must be the most important question and issue in the history of the world. And I thought that God wanted me to be a preacher. I thought that God wanted me to convince my roommate that he's real, that God's real, not my roommate. My roommate knows he's real. In the process of
Well, you've
finding out
interacted
that
with you've interacted with your roommate, right?
that'll do that. But
And you can demonstrate that you've interacted with your roommate.
I could actually call my roommate on the phone, well, my former roommate on the phone. Actually, my current roommate is producing the show, only I don't want to call him my roommate. Although we share a room more than my for the roommate did. But anyway. All right. Let's give this a shot. We got 2 more calls to try and get to. Let's start with Faith in Texas. Pronouns she, her. Faith's a clinical psychology or psychiatry student. I don't know which one because it just says psych. So we'll go clinical psych. Wants to ask us whether religion should be allowed in society. What do you mean by that, Faith? Welcome.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Jim. This is my first time calling in, and before I start, I wanted to say I appreciate the show, and my whole reason for asking that is because you know how YouTube is. Once you get something in the algorithm, all types of shit starts piping up. And like a lot of y'all's lives and phone calls started popping up, so I started watching. And it just made me think, because as a clinical psych student, I feel like and as an atheist, and I was raised Southern Baptist as well, and it took me a few years to kind of fully accept my stance on God. And I feel like in the field of psychology, we allow religion into the space, yet call ourselves scientists. And I think that I see the benefits, you know, working with patients, clients, and bringing their religion into the room. But I do, on a deeper level, feel like we're encouraging a delusion in hope that it will help somebody feel better about the existential crisis or whatever. And so in listening to y'all debate with theists and that this rigid cognitive issue, in my opinion, that they have going on, like, I see the benefits, but I want to know from y'all's perspective, do y'all think there should be religion in society in general, or there should be limitations? And is that, you know, right or wrong? And I know right or wrong is subjective, but I do want you all's opinion on that.
I do not support making any religion illegal. Actions religions do or encourage, sure. So if religion, for instance, advocated cannibalism, I would strongly advocate against allowing cannibalism. But the religion itself, I mean, people are going to believe what they're going to believe. And if anything over since World War II has shown us that the more we try and push something down like Nazism and totalitarianism, it just goes into the shadows and comes back 10 times stronger. And I think that's a really bad thing to do. So I think it's better to leave it out in the open. And as for your claim that you see the benefits of religion for things, I'd just like to point out that my girlfriend is an ICU nurse, and she has had more than one patient and their families not allow proper medical procedures to be done because they believe that faith would heal the person. Now, why they were in a hospital and ICU, I don't know that attitude, but there's just as much harm as there is good from that point of view, and that to me isn't quite right. I would advocate that for religious folks who don't think their children should be properly vaccinated or have proper health care, that in the case of the children who aren't able to make their own decisions, that yes, the state should step in and force proper health care in those cases for those who can't do it for themselves. And that wouldn't just be children, it'd be anybody who was not capable of making proper choices because of some defect or because of age, etc., but not because they choose to believe something. So no, I don't advocate for making religion illegal.
I'm in complete agreement with Jim. As a matter of freedom, I don't know how you could make religion illegal from a standpoint of you can't control what I believe. So you can only engage with actions. And so I think it should be actions that are prohibited with good reason, whether they come from a religion or are consistent with a religion or not. So for example, if your religion is, I need to drive 100 miles an hour through a school zone, That's illegal. I don't care if your God wants you to do it or not. I don't care how convinced you are. None of that. If you're like, oh, my religion prevents me from getting a blood transfusion. Okay, that's a decision you can make for yourself, but you don't get to make that for other people. And so that's kind of where I draw the lines on this. There needs to be a compelling reason to ban or prohibit something. And it's not only impossible and impractical, but potentially wrong to ban or try to ban thought.
Right. Right. And I think hearing it from that perspective, it definitely, it makes me look at my own bias and how I came to the conclusion of how I feel about organized religion. But I will say that, listening to you all, once again, talk to the theists and, the ideals that they have and how damaging some of those ideals can be, I try to keep hope in the idea that, whatever somebody's believing in, of course, it's none of my business. But the fact that it's able to seep into, our politics and government, it bothers me. And I think okay, so with a platform like you all, what's the overall goal? Is it just to educate people?
I think probably the principal reason is to have the discussions in the hopes that all of us come out the other side with a better understanding of not just each other, but what is and isn't reasonable and what the impact of beliefs are. Even if there were a God, even if I were completely convinced that, let's say the biblical God as depicted by Westboro Baptist Church, let's say I became convinced that that God absolutely exists. It wouldn't change anything about how I view right and wrong. It wouldn't change anything about what my view of humanity would be, or what my community or my view of the LGBTQ community would be, or anything along those lines. I would just now be in a position where I'm convinced that there's a God that exists and he's an immoral thug. And it wouldn't change anything about what I want to outlaw. I don't want to outlaw the belief. I definitely don't want to outlaw a belief in something that's true. But I would still say, even if there's a God, I'm opposed to what he wants to do if it's this, and this. So it turns out there's a God that's just, wonderful and absolutely fine with secular humanism and even has a better model to replace secular humanism so that we're doing better by all people. Maybe God is going to strike down capitalism and create an actual non-fucked up functional version of communism or whatever. I don't know. But whatever it is, the truth is always okay, even if it's not done at the right time and the right way. Like, when somebody's like, "Hey, do these jeans make my ass look big?" You could tell the truth, and there may be consequences depending on what the truth is. But there may be value in it. Like, I don't think those are the right jeans to wear. You can make a soft pedal, or no, baby, your ass looks banging. And the truth should always be a defense, like it is against, slander, etc. But even if there's a God, the next step is to figure out what that God needs, wants, and how it impacts my life. Because I don't just reject the God concept because I don't like it. I reject it because there isn't evidence for it. But if there were evidence for it, and the evidence proved that, there is a president of the United States. On Monday, we just swore in a new president. I fucking despise him. I think he's an idiot. I think he's corrupt. I think he's a convicted felon. I think he's an awful human being. I think he's the worst president in history. I think he's especially stupid. I think I could keep making a list. I despise him. But my believing in the president and believing that Donald Trump is president, which he is, and he won the election based on all the best information, I have no reason to doubt it. I can believe he's the president and still reject what he wants to do and stand in opposition to it. I can do the same thing with a God. They can both squash me like a bug. Nothing I can do about that. And so that's where the integrity comes in. You just stand up for what you believe and you try to make the world better. But no, I don't want to ban religion.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that perspective. And yes, my name, Faith, is ironic. I saw that in the comments. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. I mean, we got three
Welcome.
biblical names here, kind of. So
Yeah, have a good night.
thanks, Faith.
You too.
You too. Appreciate the call. All right, final call for today, and then we'll move on to super chats. Is Amir, who I'm confused, but it says Amir's a theist calling from, is it Michigan?
Yes.
Okay. Because you're on the web call and it's being routed through Bosnia. So congrats.
Yeah, I'm overseas, but I guess since I'm American, I said Michigan is where I'm from.
Oh, no worries.
That makes
I
sense.
just, we get a lot of prank callers calling in using the web interface and a VPN so that they can try and not be detected. Anyway, so it says here you want to deduce God's existence. I guess the first thing is, if you tell us, kind of give a definition of the God that you're going to deduce or what the characteristics are, and then present the deductive argument.
I wouldn't say particular God, just the idea that there must be an intelligence creator that brought everything into existence. So I'm not subscribed to a religion, if that's what you're asking.
No, I just needed whatever you're going to demonstrate. If you're calling it God, so you're saying an intelligent creator of the universe,
Yeah, of everything, eternal, beginning, creator, power, wisdom, creator of everything. Yeah, from which everything has come.
What's the deductive argument that demonstrates that?
I mean, yeah. So I'll define deduction as I'll define it first. Deduction as in when you eliminate the impossible.
Amir,
yes.
I don't need you to define deduction.
Oh, no.
So there's deductive arguments, there's inductive arguments, and there's abductive arguments. I have talked about and spoken about all of them many, many times. You said, let's deduce God. I said, what's the deductive argument? Let's go.
So we agree on deduction. Is that what you're saying? Our definitions are the same.
I don't know if we agree on deduction. I want you to present a deductive argument so that we can then assess the argument. I don't need you to tell me what a deductive... I don't... Okay, never mind, Amir. This is a waste of time. Goodbye.
Wait, hold on, Matt. I don't think it is. So, Amir, you started to say that when you eliminate...
I'm the last caller. I'm the last caller. Give me one more. Hold on. Last caller, come on.
When you
last
started
caller,
to say...
nothing.
You started to quote Sherlock Holmes. Can you finish the quote that you're going to use for your deductive argument, please?
Yeah, when you eliminate the impossible, whatever's left, no matter how improbable, must be true.
Yeah, I call that.
So there's a couple
I call
of
that the Conan Doyle fallacy.
Yeah, and it is a fallacy when you use it as an argument, because it's not an argument; it's an investigative method. Do you know where that quote comes from and under what circumstances that Sherlock Holmes said it? And under those circumstances, he's right. But do you know what that is? What case in particular?
It doesn't matter about that case. It matters I can apply it to other things.
Yes, it does.
Like this.
So here's the problem that you have with that statement. Okay, and I want to use the story that Conan Doyle used that in and had Sherlock Holmes said that, because when Sherlock Holmes said it, he was right, but you can't use that in the general sense, and I'll explain to you why. So the story, the case is The Sign of the Four, and it's a locked room murder mystery. So essentially, a guy has been murdered inside a room that is locked from the inside and was not unlocked at any time. The only key is on the inside. And so Sherlock Holmes in this story does something that's fairly unusual for him, in that he redoes all the work the cops have already done. Now, he dismisses the work they've done. He's pointed out where they've done it wrong, but he's never redone it. And he does that in this case. So he looks behind curtains, and he looks at windows, and he looks at under the desk, and he looks all over the place. And he can't find a way for the room to be unlocked from the outside, and he can't find a way for anybody inside to hide. And so he comes to the conclusion, since I have gone through all of the possible things, then what must be impossible must be possible. And what's the impossible thing in this case? That the room cannot be unlocked from the outside. And so does he turn to the supernatural? No, he does not. You know what he does? He figures out a way to unlock the room from the outside. And then he sets about finding evidence for figuring that out. And that's what this is. So you could only use this when everything is known and you can eliminate all of the known things. But then you don't get to turn to the supernatural. You have to still look at the natural. Why? Because in the last 2,000 years, no supernatural claim has been supported by the evidence. And I'm only going back 2,000 years because that was when Christ was born. When we go back farther, no supernatural claim has withstood that. So you can't use that because we don't know all the possibilities. You're making the claim that some being created the universe. How do you know that? How did
Yeah,
you
I was gonna get
eliminate
to that.
natural causes?
Yes, I'm the whole Sherlock Holmes thing. I'm from what I remember. Yeah, it's from him. So let me just kind of like clarify or steel man what you said. You basically said that the guy was in the room locked, and then eventually he found another option, and he used that to figure out his way out of the room. Is that it?
Well, no, he eliminated all of the possibilities inside of a locked room, right? A locked room is a finite set of possibilities.
Yes.
That's the problem with saying that, is you could only say when you've eliminated the possible, only when it's possible to eliminate the possible. So when there's a limited number of options, it's the only time you can do it. The only time that statement is true.
Okay, so are you saying that when it comes to God, there are unlimited options as to whether or not it could be true, or is it limited?
Well,
Limited
you're making the claim, so you need to limit the options to that there is this being that exists. And just because you eliminate natural possibilities doesn't necessarily mean you have eliminated that you can claim that a being did it, because you've got to prove that, because the only thing you can do is disprove natural possibilities that we're aware of.
Okay, but if I can still limit the options, this Sherlock Holmes thing does still apply
Yes,
to
you can,
God,
but
right?
we don't. You can't claim right now that we understand enough about science to do that.
Not only that, you still have to show that God is a candidate option as opposed to just something else that you don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, can something come from nothing?
I have no idea. I have no idea if there's ever been a nothing, if there ever could be a nothing. I don't know how something could come from it. I don't know that anything ever has or hasn't. We don't know.
Yes. Something can come from nothing. If you're using the physics definition of nothing, then yes, in fact, physics has actually proven that. Now, if you're going to claim that there's some sort of absolute nothing, then you also have to deal with the fact that physics has proven that's not true. That the philosophical nothing can't exist. So you've got a couple of problems there. However, if you want to start with a philosophical nothing, then you have to deal with the fact that if nothing exists, that includes a rule. A rule does not exist. It says something can't come from nothing. That rule does not exist. So you still have problems. But
it also would apply to
physics.
It would also apply to whatever creator. It also apply to whatever creator. Is your creator nothing? Is the creator nothing?
No, the creator is something.
Did the creator always exist?
Yes.
Then there was never a nothing. So doesn't matter if something can come from nothing. There was never a nothing under your model.
I'm asking you. That's the option I'm going to go through. Can something come from nothing?
I just gave you two yeses that something can come from nothing, right? Science has proven that something can come from the physics definition of nothing, and science has proved that the philosophical nothing doesn't exist. Even if we start with that philosophical nothing, because nothing exists, there is no rule against something coming from nothing. So either way you want to look at it, the answer is yes.
No, because no thing means the absence of something. So if you were to say something can come from nothing,
I just used that definition to prove you wrong. If nothing exists, is there a rule that says something can't come from nothing?
No, nothing is the absence of something. That's my definition.
You're not even listening or attempting to answer. It's embarrassing.
Right. If nothing exists, is there a rule that says something can't come from nothing?
I don't understand. If nothing exists, is there a rule? There is nothing. There are no rules. There are no possibilities.
Exactly. There's no rule claiming that that something can't come from nothing.
Yeah, so
Your
therefore
claim
you
is
can't get
invalid.
something from nothing.
No, yeah,
You can't get a rule
no.
or
You just said
possibility.
you're
Nothing.
claiming there's a rule that says that, and there isn't one.
No, if there ever was to be nothing, that's the question. I don't believe that
Yeah,
there
right.
could ever
And I'm
be
saying there's
nothing.
no rule against it. So yes, something can come from nothing because there's nothing to prevent it.
No, not nothing. If
Yes,
nothing,
that's
the
the
absence
basic
of
of the logic
all
that you're trying to
possibilities.
do. Right. Including something can't come from nothing because there's no rule against it. There can't be, according to your definition of nothing. But we leave the philosophy alone and let's deal with the physics. So the
No, it's
physics
not
says
philosophy.
that there is no such thing as nothing. The physics
I
says
mean,
that
it's
for
not
the physics
philosophy.
definition of nothing, something can come from it. And third, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, period, which means there is no version of the Big Bang Theory that starts with nothing. So you're just wrong on every possible level. You're wrong on the physics on 3 different ways, and you're wrong on the philosophy.
No, my definition is not the physics definition, nothing. Right? So my definition is if
You're right, and
nothing
I
is
just said
absolutely
you're also
something,
wrong on the philosophy. You're wrong on the
not
philosophy
what,
because there's nothing stopping something coming from nothing. There's nothing stopping that.
nothing. No, if we define nothing
You're
as the
making a
absence of
rule that
something,
you say doesn't exist with nothing. You're making a rule that says something can't come from nothing. That rule is something. How do you square that?
that's contradictory because if there's nothing, you can't have
No,
anything
it's
to
not.
be. That's the point because there's no
I
thing. There is
agree.
no
I
thing.
agree, but you're saying that there is a rule that says something can't come from nothing. And I'm saying that rule doesn't exist, and you're wrong. Because if that rule doesn't exist, then something can come from nothing.
Yeah, again, because no, our
You're being
definition is
hoisted on your own
not.
petard. Yes.
Uh,
Yes. You can't claim a rule exists if nothing exists, and that's what you're doing.
yeah, so you're saying the universe could have come from nothing? It's possible.
Oh no, I'm not saying the universe came from nothing at all. I'm saying the universe started from energy because energy can neither be created nor destroyed. That's the scientific. That's the science of it.
So the
That's the
energy, where did
science
the
of
energy
it.
come
Period.
from?
End of conversation. Pardon?
The energy, where did the energy come from?
Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. The energy is. What part of that did you not understand?
That's not the full definition of it.
Yes, energy can neither be
Yeah.
created nor destroyed.
Within a closed system. That's the part you're missing.
No, you're confusing two different. You're confusing two different rules. You're confusing two different laws of thermodynamics.
No, repeat that again.
Yes, you're confusing two different rules of thermodynamics.
Which two different
Energy
rules?
can neither be created nor destroyed.
That's
Energy
the first law.
decreases in a closed system.
That's the second law that applies to closed system.
Yeah.
The first law doesn't apply to a closed system.
First law,
Right.
however, does apply to your God.
No, sorry. As far as I understand, it applies to within a closed system. Otherwise, all these definitions that I'm getting are
No.
wrong.
Go look. You're a computer.
Go
Go look
find
it
a way.
up.
Yep, you can go look it up. But
I've read multiple sources.
the thing
but, I
is-
mean,
First law of thermodynamics. The first
thing
law
is-
of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred or converted from one form to another. The second law of thermodynamics is
right.
The total amount of energy in the universe is constant, but the amount of energy available to organized matter decreases over time. So you are wrong.
Just like entropy,
Again, you
right?
don't even
That's
understand the
wrong.
basics. You don't even understand the laws of thermodynamics, much less
but it doesn't
philosophy.
even. But it doesn't even matter because whether or not Jim's answer is correct or whether or not we have an answer doesn't tell us anything at all about your answer, other than if Jim's answer is correct, then your answer is wrong. But let's say Jim's answer is wrong or we didn't have an answer, that doesn't get anywhere towards actually demonstrating God. If you wanted to create a deductive argument to demonstrate that there must be a an intelligent creator, you cannot just stick with this, oh, can something come from nothing thing? There must have been something outside to make. None of that works because
Yes, it does.
no, because a deductive argument is deductive arguments are connected premises with major and minor premises in a connecting term that leads to a conclusion. What is the premise one, premise two conclusion that begins with something can't come from nothing?
I mean, you don't necessarily need premises. You draw conclusions.
Yes, you
based on
do.
valid inference.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but yes, you do. If you're going to make a deductive argument, there are a number of different ways to format it. It doesn't necessarily have to be premise one, premise two, conclusion. You can still do it in notation and other ways, but a deductive argument isn't just, hey, I don't think that something can come from nothing. I don't think there was a nothing. Therefore, there must have been a something. That's not the way this works. What is premise one of your deductive argument? What is the first premise of your deductive argument?
Well, that's not the only definition of deduction.
What is the first fucking premise of your deductive argument? Don't tell me that there's other options. I'm asking you, do you have a first premise to your deductive argument? Yes or no?
Hang on. Again, our definitions are different.
Do you have, I'm going to mute you because I'm sick of this shit. Here's the question. It's a yes or no question. If any other word comes out of your mouth, we're done. If you answer the yes or no question, then we can continue. Do you have an opening premise for your deductive argument? Yes or no? He hung up.
Okay.
He was incapable
So
of answering a yes or no argument.
Yeah. From the Wikipedia article on deductive reasoning, deductive reasoning is the process of drawing valid inferences. An inference is valid if its conclusion follows logically from its premises, meaning that it is impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false. So I don't know what other definitions he's using, but that's also pretty much what the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says. That is what deductive reasoning is. And you can't get there from here. So.
And then there's inductive arguments, and then there's abductive arguments, which is an argument to the best explanation. And I don't like wasting time on abductive arguments for God, because the first thing that needs to happen if you're creating an abductive argument, which is that God is the best explanation for some observation, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure that Amir's argument would be an abductive one, in this, which is where we get the Sherlock Holmes thing that you were objecting to, would be
Right.
That God is the best explanation for the origin of the universe. And you can't even show that God is a candidate explanation. The reason I call the, once you've eliminated all other options, that whatever remains, however impossible, must be the right answer, I call that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's fallacy, because, and I'm not impressed by Conan Doyle. He writes in a way that cheats. Sherlock Holmes is impossibly brilliant and has access to information and able to deduce things that nobody could, because he can't. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, by the way, also famously believed in the Cottingley fairies and believed that Houdini, who he was friends with, could dematerialize. I know all this because it's part of my magic show. I give this lecture as part of my magic show before I escape from ropes faster than Houdini or dematerialize to transfer out. The problem with what Sherlock Holmes says there, how do you know you've eliminated all other possibilities?
Bingo.
Yep. It is arrogance on Sherlock Holmes's part to think that you know enough to have eliminated all other possibilities. And that's what Jim was describing when he got into the actual story. Similarly, Conan Doyle lived by this, because when Houdini would escape, he would come out from behind the curtain, his hands and legs free of shackles, but the shackles would still be locked and the ropes would still be tied. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, in his brilliance, deduced that because of this, the only explanation was that Houdini dematerialized to release himself from the ropes. Now, I can tell you, I wasn't there. And I did not see Houdini. I never met Houdini. I never watched Houdini perform other than in films. And for some things, I don't know for sure what Houdini's method was. for most things, I know exactly how Houdini did it. I've done metamorphosis. I've done escapes. I've done,
Mhm.
I know ways to do it. So for the second time today, to quote the late, great, amazing Randy, if Houdini was actually dematerializing, he's doing it the hard way. If these people, these psychics are talking to the dead, doing it the hard way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing in the laws of physics that indicates that dematerialization is even possible.
Yeah. How many potential candidate explanations can you come up with for any observed phenomenon if you don't have to demonstrate that they're even possible? Like, for example, Amir called. Why did Amir decide to call? Was it fate? Was it determined by the universe? Was he told to call by God? Was he told to call by 2 gods? Was he told to call by 5 gods? Was he told to call by the universe-forming pixies that exist in another region? Did he decide to call after consulting his magic mirror? Did nobody tell him to call, and instead he just happened to pick up the phone, accidentally dialed the number that gets to this show, and happened to have something to discuss? You can make untestable, unfalsifiable, possible explanations for things forever, because you can just modify them just a little bit to have it's an infinite sequence of untestable, unfalsifiable things. Before, when Sherlock Holmes eliminates all the other possibilities to get to the last one, at least the hope is that he's been able to make an exhaustive list of candidate explanations. We can almost never do that. The only way you can be sure that you have an exhaustive list of candidate explanations is to, and this is why so many of us focus on propositional logic, is to boil it down to A or not A, because a direct logical negation is exhaustive. Those are the only 2 options. Something's either an apple or it's not an apple. That's it. Direct, it's either whatever it is or it's not that. Anyway, we have a bunch of super chats to get to if you're ready, Jim.
Yeah, let's do it.
Also, I apologize. I got in a hurry and I said, Jim asked this question and I was completely wrong. I did what the callers do. No good excuse even. I don't have any good excuse for why I didn't listen to and correctly suss out Jim's question. But
it happens when we're in the thick of things, so it's no big deal.
And the nice thing is
$10.
Oh, the nice thing is that Jim can say, no, my question was this. And I can be like, oh, yes, I was wrong. Sorry. Continue.
Exactly. Nothing wrong with being wrong. $10 from Jared Gerber Fuller. Another awesome show with excellent hosts. Thank you for the weekly laughs, logic, and entertainment. You are most welcome. Thanks for the $10.
Thank you, Jared. $10 from Greg Murkowski. Always great when Jim's on the show. That's true.
Thank you.
I like it better when Jim's here.
$10 from Dante Verona. Graviora manent is Latin for heavier things remain, also known as the worst is yet to come. Trump is president again. Take care of yourself and save your money, but do what you can when you can. That's always true. Do what you can with what you got. Yeah, and I think the worst is yet to come. As bad as it's been so far.
I tell you, Dante, I will look fondly upon the couple of brief interactions we've had at events if we don't ever get to hang out again. One of the things that's kind of a goal of mine is to find a way for all of us to get through the next 4 years and genuinely rebuild. We've tried and failed and tried and failed. And there's a thought process that is at some point, you got to kind of burn it down or let the worst happen or hit rock bottom before you're able to recover. The general trend of societal, goodness or interaction or health has been an upward trend. We live longer, we do better, we understand better, but it does vacillate. And so that you just look at the trend. We are getting ready to take we might be taking a dive greater than Donald Trump's crypto coin did when it went live the other day.
That's scary.
But we may be able to rebuild. And if we do, I want to do it with y'all. I want to do it with the people who understand and value the truth, who have empathy for others, who would rather stand up for integrity than suck up for money. Oh, this one's me. $20 from Heisenberg. Hey, good to talk to you. Hey, guys, it's going to take years, if not decades, to recover from the damage Trump will inflict, not on just America, but on the rest of the world as well. Fact. We've already lost the Supreme Court for a generation.
Yeah. I think, too, people don't realize that if Trump attempts to invade Canada or Greenland, that triggers Clause 5 of NATO. And it means that we will be in a war against all of Europe. So, yeah, it could be much worse than we think it will be.
Panama, on the other hand, we can just take it back.
No, I think Panama will go running towards, Panama will go running into China's arms, which would be very bad for us.
Yes.
$10 from Weston Campbell. I am very fearful of this new administration. Just in case a fascist big brother is watching, I'd like to state that 2 + 2 = 5, or we'll reference. Glad to see you, Jim. Burgle, Benurgle, Burgle.
Fair. Thanks, Weston. $10 from Storm Chaser Noah. How can I be more effective dismantling transphobic rhetoric? I'm at a loss because appealing to biological science, neuroscience, or anything that zapped my past transphobia isn't working. The whole subject of just trans identity in the first place is not a function of merely biology or merely neuroscience. It's at the intersection of biology, sociology, and psychology. The most important lesson, the most important point you can have in your head, from my opinion, and please tune in the Transatlantic Call-In show tomorrow. I will run through this. Arden, who's on tomorrow?
Myself and Steph Helms.
Awesome. So Arden and Stephanie Helms they will have better things to say. But I think the key mistake that I see in 90% plus of people arguing against transness, and this goes for Dawkins and others as well, is that they portray the scenario not as if there are cis people and trans people, but if there's trans people and people. It's trans women and real women, trans women or trans men and real men. Instead, they're all real men, they're all real women, or neither. But trans people aren't claiming that their gonads are different from what they are. Trans people aren't claiming that their gametes are different from what they are. Trans people aren't claiming that their chromosomes are different from what they are. Trans people are claiming that they are different from what society has culturally prescribed and dictated to them that they must be. And if that doesn't cut through the bullshit, you have someone who's just rejecting the very notion that anything other than a prescriptive biological essentialist view of gender could ever be correct. And they're putting themselves in a position where they're no longer worth talking to. It would be, I'm not even going to be able to come up with a good example right now, but we look at it like, how do you tell if I'm right-handed or left-handed? You can't. And I might not merely be either. I might be truly ambidextrous. I might be partially ambidextrous. You could throw something to me and see which hand I catch it with, but I'm one of these people who's a little weird, and I've trained myself to, on occasion, grab something when it's thrown at me with my non-dominant hand. And there's also people who have a dominant hand for one activity and a different dominant hand for a different activity. You could try and do it down with a dominant eye. But at the end of the day, it's a psychological thing. And let's say I'm right-handed and you cut off my right arm. Does that mean I'm left-handed now? Or am I a right-handed person being forced to continue operating as if they're left-handed and to make do? And what trans people are essentially saying is, you're telling me that because I caught the ball with my left hand, I must be left-handed, and you're going to chop off my right hand and not let me use it no matter how many times I tell you I'm right-handed. That's as close as I can get off the cuff to what I think one of the core mistakes about this is, and I wish you luck.
Yeah. $10 from Monkey at Typewriter regarding the bishop's Trump speech. I agree that'd be fairly inappropriate in normal circumstances. I think the fact that she did it helps act as a reminder that this ain't normal. YGH?
That's your gay
Oh,
homie.
you're gay
That's for me.
Right.
Yep. I'm with you, Monkey. I think yep. $10 from Weston Campbell. Hey, Ash, my God, Fergal Burgle Minergal Burgle has been so busy with streaming PoE 2 and a 90 plus level character. They didn't level the universe came about without their involvement. Are you being serial? I think something might have got lost in the typing there, but I appreciate it.
Deliberately lost. I think it was deliberately lost in the typing.
I'll see you tomorrow, Weston, when I do my third ascension.
$9.99 from Balthazar228. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Can't help but think that's a command to jack off your neighbor. Feels a bit violating.
It's another thing that
Okay.
this ties in with the various views of the golden rule, where Jesus's version, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is a problem because I would like people to be brutally honest with me. Not everybody wants to be treated with brutal honesty. If I treat everybody the way I'm treated, all of a sudden I'm an asshole. So living by the golden rule is a mistake. Instead, a better version, perhaps the platinum version, is do unto others as they would have you do unto them, with exceptions. Like if somebody wants you to kill them, probably shouldn't do that unless, there's extenuating circumstances. But generally speaking,
$9.99 from Jamie Gallier. Gallier? I apologize for screwing that name up because I'm sure I did. I love Jim. Thank you. I love me too. And I love all the
good.
callers donating because that helps pay the bills to keep Colin's studio going.
Yeah. $20 from Renee the Renegade. Thank you so much, Renee. That's greatly generous and appreciated.
$10 from RC Deshen. Here, add this to the SIS funds so it won't run out next time. We appreciate that.
Had a weird yawn timing there. Sorry. $50 from Tammy B. Thank you so much, Tammy.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm just
$10 from Mercenary Crow. Ash had finally asked the right question and tried to backpedal. I agree. He finally asked the right question.
My heart goes out to Ash because I'm sure they're a very nice person. And they're just trying to figure out what makes sense. But whenever you take somebody who's trying to figure out what makes sense, you have to find the roadblock that is preventing them from getting to the path that leads to truth. And that starts sometimes with asking, do you care more about truth than comfort? And it was very obvious that despite saying, I care more about truth, while that I don't think they're lying when they say that. I think that what they're doing is giving the answer they think we want. Because somewhere they realize that people should care about truth. There's a benefit to caring about truth. I think we all kind of intuitively realize, if you're getting ready to cross the road, you really should know whether it's true or not that there's a bus coming. If you're crossing the railroad tracks, you should care about the truth of whether or not the trains are coming. And
sometimes,
but you see people betray
to be true, we don't act on.
Yeah. Oh. But you see people always act in accordance with their convictions. It's just that sometimes one conviction overrides another. So somebody can be saying, I care about truth, except when this, and this are involved, then I care if it's comforting. And it's really difficult and a lot of work to take this sort of personal inventory to figure out where your gaps in caring about truth are. And, we do what we can here. We'll try to help out and everything else, but it's kind of You got to answer the question. And if you say you're in it for the truth, cool, we'll go at it. And if you say you're not in it for the truth, then we'll just let you go.
$10 from Mr. Borisilla. 10. Here
Boricua.
have some monies for the Boricua. Okay. Can't afford such a resource to not be able to be communicated. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Every dollar helps.
That's fair. One of you guys paid for all the calls after this tonight. $10 from Crystal Williams. Love that, Jim. You can be loved without attributing it to an imaginary deity. Don't give your power away. True. Amen.
I
And
think
thank you,
that's a large
Crystal.
part of what people do. Yeah. $10 from Drew Skaggs. Some extra monies for the show. Got to keep it alive. Yes, we do. Thank you so much, Drew. We appreciate that.
Yep. Y'all are hot buttered awesome. $10 from Minute Rice 1954. Can't have that trans fund depleting now, can we? Facetiousness aside, we need y'all's voices now more than ever. Thank you. That means a lot, because I've said I'm going to do this till I'm dead, but there are days when death would have been like an acceptable option to some things, but never preferable over everything. But it's really easy to throw in the towel. I will say, I don't think you're going to find anybody on the planet. This is interesting. It's a little bit of a brag, because Jim mentioned we both have egos. It's a little bit of a brag, but let's see. Is there another person on the planet that has done a regular call-in show longer than I have? I don't know, because maybe somebody on NPR, or public access, or I don't know. But I got to be up there amongst a handful of people that have done 20, coming up on 21 years.
Probably, certainly, consistently. I would guess would be. There may be people who've done it longer, but not as consistently over the same amount of time. But I don't know. Yeah,
there's people who've done more, though, because there's people who've been doing like 6 years of 5 days a week taking calls. That's different, because mine are 1 or 2 days a week, maybe 3 times a week at most. But anyway,
yeah. $10 from Hypa. God makes an exception to homosexual acts if the act is the pearly gates position. Okay. I don't think I'm going to Google that anytime soon. Yeah, I don't think I want to Google it. Yeah.
I will, just because I'm curious. I don't need safe search. I'm a big boy. $20 from Sherman Bay. Just a tiny amount to help you with your need for extra money. As Arden said, keep on trucking. True. Thank you so much, Sherman Bay.
$20 from Viscara. Replenish the funds. Do the things. Yay.
I lost my place. I get an easy one. I get $10 from LA Silver Surfers, who is here week after week doing exactly this. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate the support.
$30 Canadian, which is what, $1 US? No, just kidding. From Monster in Head. After yesterday's outrages, here's some money to share in the defense of trans people, because they are people in their own right, for their own merits, and in their own self-worth. Trust Arden to get this where it goes. Yes. Oh, and I think we had an earlier comment that had replenishing the CIS funds or something to that effect. And I think it was in reference to Arden's comment that Jimmy had to borrow money from the other show. So I think we were both kind of confused by that, but these last two comments reminded me that that's probably what that was in reference to.
Yeah, I heard her say that, and then I saw somebody comment, and I was like, oh, I was distracted, and maybe I missed part of the joke, but we're all good. $20 from Carpe, the DM. Talk hard, you can't stop the signal. Wait.
Amen.
Is you can't stop the signal from Pump Up the Volume, or is it from something else as well?
Serenity also.
Yes, Serenity as well. I get the feeling that Pump Up the Volume is a Christian Slater movie that's, I don't know, late 80s, maybe early 90s. Okay. I liked it.
Yeah. $10 Austrian from Heisenberg. Did Jimmy have to wear the magic underwear? You're assuming that he's not still wearing magic underwear.
Jimmy's underwear is magic, whether it's Mormon or not. Our Cynic 1987 says Trump won. Finally, we can start teaching alchemy again. Hashtag education. hashtag. True.
Yeah.
Teach the controversy.
$10 from Beasel. Every level of the universe seems to have a structured chaos similar to that of a lava lamp, which implies the existence of a lava lamp designer. Checkmate, atheists. Okay.
I never thought of it like that.
That makes some sense.
I think so. I get it. You're having fun. Let me take it seriously for a second for those interested in rebuttal things. Dan Dennett in, I think it may be Consciousness Explained or in one of Dan's books, I have to, he talks about, and it has a picture of a flock of birds, and there's video footage. And if you watch, there's flocks of birds and they move and they create interesting shapes and they move together and all this. And it happens despite the fact that there's no bird in charge. There's no plan for it. We spot the patterns, even if they're not able to see the patterns because they're in the midst of it. And yet the patterns are there. And what appears to be intent, if you backed up, what you would see is a blob that's a little translucent and appears to be thinking, as if the blob is thinking. But no, the blob is not thinking. Individual birds are flying alongside others and making decisions. And something about the function of all that gives a different impression from the perspective. I'm going to be doing a video on Conway's Game of Life and a couple of inferences to take away from that as well. But I'll probably pull up a video of that and mention it.
I need to send you this article I've got because it builds a little bit on that in some really interesting ways.
Ooh, nice.
But yeah. $20 from Tall Girl 195. The Humanist Report did a good video on a lawn stunt. Made this a double as penalty for shilling another channel. Thanks for all your hard work. I haven't figured out how to stop feeling a constant storm cloud overhead.
Yeah.
It
is. We are troubled. We're just not giving up. $10 from Nuzzy D. As creators and communicators, do you face any backlash or danger? I want to become a creator with a young family. Given the current climate, I'm convinced and concerned and split between speaking and staying quiet. Well, I had to call the FBI, or we had to contact the FBI again about somebody making seemingly credible death threats. And in the 21 years that I've been doing this, that's happened more than a handful of times. I will say that the people most likely, it's not most likely, everybody's going to get harassed and threats and everything else. If you're a woman, you're going to get the worst of it. I mean, I know, both from all the women I work with on all the networks I've been involved with, and from both my ex-wife and other friends in the community. If you're a woman and you are active in the atheist community, or pretty much anywhere else, you're going to get it with both barrels. And it's going to be not just, it'll be death threats, threats of sexual assault, all kinds of stuff. It's never ending. I remember, I've told the story before, I'll keep it really brief. There was a creator who I will not name because she's garbage, who came to us and said, Aaron and I were standing there, and she's like, oh, now I'm starting to get a name in the community and everything else. I got a whole folder full of my death threats, but you guys know all about that. And Aaron looked at her and said, no, I don't ever get death threats. And I said, I've had a couple, but I certainly don't have a folder full of death threats. And then there were also, someone who's just been in the community for a short period of time, death threats, threats of sexual assault and other things. It's never ending. And the nature of the attacks on me changed depending on who I've pissed off most recently. For example, I will frequently get attacked by vegans who are not happy to say, ooh, Matt says that veganism is a moral virtue, but isn't convinced it's a moral duty. That should be good enough. No, 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 no. That makes me a monster. And the whole you're gay homie thing, because, ooh, my partner's trans. I must be gay. It is. And by the way, that's just bigoted homophobia. But what I love most is when they say something like, your girlfriend's a man. Because they gendered her correctly. They can't help doing it. But they need to take a dig at one of us. So it's either you're gay homie or whatever. It's the wildest stuff. If you don't have thick skin, a good community surrounding you, and the ability to get away from this stuff, don't do it. Other than that, give it a shot. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and protecting yourself from harm. We need voices, but we don't need people taking undue risks.
Yeah. $10 for Monkey at Typewriter. Testimony's value is refuted by Dylan's hurricane. You think you'd like to play ball with the law? Think it might have been that fighter you saw running that night? Don't forget that you are white. I have no idea what any of that refers to. But thank you for the $10. We appreciate it.
I think that's a Bob Dylan lyric.
Could be.
I feel bad now. $10 from One-Eyed Heathen. I'd like to recommend the book On Tyranny and remind people to not obey in advance. You are not alone. MAGA's a cult. Nothing about our situation is normal. True. But also, I hate to do this. Go ahead. I'm not going to do it. Jim, go ahead.
Okay, I just was saying amen. So, nothing is normal. $9.99 from DeLorean 237. Matt, thank you for giving me new material to use to make my religious family members roll their eyes at me at our next gathering.
My pleasure. I like watching people think and making people think, but if I can't be there to watch it, at least I'll know that I got some eye rolls, and that's good.
Yeah.
$10 from the Raven 200.
It's yours.
That?
It's yours.
Everyone be sure to consensually bend that like button over your lap and give it a spanking on its big round peachy jiggly derriere. Make that like button moan your name. Hashtag kinky little button gang. Yeah. Click those buttons. Not only that, this would be a good moment there we go. I've got my list. This would be a good moment to remind people that there's a lot of shows here on the line, a lot of people participating. We're incredibly grateful that Jim had the time to come join us tonight. But the Transatlantic Call-In Show will be live tomorrow. Arden will be on there along with Stephanie Helms. Then on Sunday, the 2 o'clock show, the Sunday show at 2 p.m. Central is myself and John Gleason. Hoorah. And the 7 o'clock show is going to be Forrest and Seth. And then Dr. Aaron Adair will be hosting Skeptalk on Monday. Alyssa and Eve will be back with Chewed Gum on Tuesday, and I will be back with Eve on Wednesday for the final hang-up of January. Looking forward to it. It's been a wild month, and I love the fact that while we messed up a little on some early scheduling, I get to do what I love, and I get to do it with people that I genuinely admire and respect. And how do you go wrong with that? So there's plenty of shows here for you to like and subscribe to this channel. Oop, I think I messed something up.
$19.99 from Los. Jimmy's Bills Fund. Go fuck yourself, you're gay homie, and I'm unfamiliar with LTPTFA.
Oh boy. $10 from the Raven. I hope y'all are enjoying the show. If not, Matt and Jim might hit you with a 3 like Bubba Ray and Devon Dudley. Devon, get the tables. Speaking of, Jimmy, go take a 3D through a table. There you go. Fact. I just watched some content with Devon the other day. But yeah, I've been watching a lot of behind the scenes stuff more than the actual wrestling. But
$10 from Moira Bannister. We witnessed the birth of double thought and double speak. Orwell is still relevant. Bannon and T took a page from Putin and prematurely accusing their opponents with what they're already planning to do. Pretty
It's
much.
amazing. Doppelganger by Naomi Klein is an amazing resource into the strategy of the new fascists, namely Bannon and Trump and their toadies. And that came from Moira as well with another $10. I like the fact that Super Chats are short because the people who want to be more verbose and get better information to us end up paying us twice.
Exactly.
That said, thank you so much, Moira.
$10 from the Dyslexic Squirrel for the Trans Fund. Thank you very much.
Fair. Also, $50 Australian from Tammy B. Trans Fund? Okay. Y'all are legit awesomes.
$5 from Squidward Q Sagan. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
$100 from Arsenic 1981. The truth has nothing to fear from inquiry, mental, and I'm probably not the first person to say that. I may have even seen that like on a bumper sticker or something. So here's the thing. It's fine. There are some quotes out there that are just going to be misattributed. I'm happy if I've said something that is remotely original, feel free to credit me, but I'm always reluctant when I see something like this that's like, yeah, okay, I said it, but
right.
I don't think I should get the credit for it. Fergal Burgle Minergal Burgle, though, that's fucking mine.
$19.99 from John Kennel. Put this toward getting your Heisenberg compensator fixed. Okay.
$10 from May Krinich. Sorry. Replenish the funds. Been watching you all nonstop for a couple months. Keep up the good work. And thank you. That's kind as well. We got a third one from Raven.
$10 from the Raven 200. I got a 12-pack of root beer and some chili and fry bread cooking. I'm having res tacos tonight. Matt, you heard that the WWE is thinking of bringing Hogan back for another appearance. More booze coming. Yeah, I think
I did
we'll get
not
more
hear
booze
that.
coming there.
I mean, he got basically booed off stage. I can't believe that they're actually talking about bringing him back for anything. The only thing that might work. The only thing that might work is to bring him back as a heel and just mock him for the rest of whatever time. But he couldn't even walk out to ringside. Like, he came out and stood out there, just past the tube. And I mean, Jimmy Hart's older than him, and Jimmy Hart looked better and more mobile. Now, granted, to be fair, Hogan's put his body through a lot. Not as much as a lot of other wrestlers, because he would squash opponents, drop a leg, and pose. And so that's not as stressful as, like Matt Hardy spearing someone hanging from 20 feet above the ring, or Mick Foley taking a jump from the Hell in the Cell into a table. But still, it's rough work. And I'm sure Hogan's had the shit kicked out of him a couple times, probably at least once backstage, because that's what happens to lying racist pieces of crap. Oh, sorry. Jared Bear Fuller.
From...
Matt, Google is showing that you are one of the most well-known hosts of atheist call-in shows, but they're also referencing you to that other program I did for 18 years. So of course they're going to reference that. I'm not hiding the fact that I used to do another show. I just don't want to keep bringing it up, considering, what ended up happening. On that note, that's all the super chats. You guys, first of all, thank you so much for paying the phone bill so that we can take more calls. Thank you so much for the thoughtful comments and the fact that we had only one obvious, really serious troll, and the rest of them were just difficult conversations or good conversations. Stay tuned to this network. Check out the podcast, because The Line has a podcast that started a couple of days ago. You can find out more information at patreon.com/calltheline. You can sign up and become a member here. You can like and sub. You can click on all the stuff. You can buy merchandise from linemerch.com, etc. All that aside, there's a lot coming. It's a massive, massive list of executive orders that I did not even get through. I picked out the most obvious, most egregious, problematic ones. There's going to be more, and we have cabinet positions confirming. Is he going to adjourn Congress in order to get them approved, just get them in there, because there's a lot that can change in a single day.
Mhm.
Just on Monday from noon to the end of the day, he impacted DEI hires, trans folks' rights, pulled us out of the World Health Organization, pulled us out of the Paris Accord. If we spend any more time focusing on renaming the Gulf of Mexico, I will pull the hair off of my face since there's no more left on my head. It doesn't matter. Of all the executive orders, this one impacts no one and has no significance everywhere. So call it the Gulf of Mexico because they can't stop you from calling it that. Keep your maps that say Gulf of Mexico. It's a collector's item now. If you get one of those maps that says Gulf of America, keep it, frame it next to the Gulf of Mexico one. And then in 4 years, it'll be like, you remember that time when our president was so stupid that he decided to try to rename the Gulf of Mexico? I mean, that's the kind of reaction we're hoping to have down the road. In the meantime, find yourself a group of people that you share common interests with, common values, common goals. Work together with us here at The Line, building a network, building a community, and doing what we can to protect those who may not be in a position to protect themselves, and to stand up against fascist, tyrannical bullshit. I try to come up with another word, but it's bullshit. It's bullshit not because it's bad. It's bullshit not because it's bullshit because we've been down this road before, and somehow or another we still ended up with not just a nation, but multiple nations that are filled with so many ill-informed, misinformed, conspiracy-minded, backward-thinking buffoonery idiots. We are all dumb. We are all stupid. We are all idiots about something sometime, but we have amplified being idiots to a fine art when we elected Trump. And the world is going to follow suit on a number of different fronts. So stay strong, stay with us, and maybe in 4 years, maybe we'll get to turn a corner. But I'm not counting on it yet, and neither should anybody else. There's a ton of work to do. Thanks to Jim for joining us tonight. Thanks to our call screener. Thanks to all of our moderators, Art and Hart for producing, all of our patron producers that are over there on that side. Go to atheist.com or atheist.com. Never mind. Well, you can go to atheist.com if you want to, but go to patreon.com/calltheline and linemerch.com to help support what we do. Thanks everybody for getting the phones back working today. And for those of you who called back, awesome. And if you got dropped and you didn't call back, there's another show tomorrow and Sunday and Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday.